Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, John Travolta, JMails24, Unamento, M, Iron26, Endless, Flat Earth Sage, Goldie McKinnon, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, Fiber Oats, Bogey, Michael Kahn, Rob H, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Mel B Styles, Troy Shuker, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
Yeah. This is Neil, right?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like I was just saying to Righteous, he's got a valuable resource here, but I was wondering if there would be like because sometimes I feel sort of restricted in Nathan's sphere because it is his channel, it is his sphere. But I mentioned the other day, for example, that there was an elephant in the room, and I think it's basically around this matter of those who may hold to a biblical view, Christian view, when it comes to this whole discussion. And I don't know if Nathan is on yet. But I think I would like to owe him an apology because I did something that I don't like doing. Which someone asked me a question, and I answered it, but I almost felt like I was talking behind somebody's back, and I hate doing that. And I did it, and I felt bad after because. I don't want to. I want to say something in front of somebody's face rather than behind their back and get the backlash then, and we can deal with why it was said. And I think, in some sense, when we as Christians are in this discussion, there are consequences to it. Like I'm hearing things that I'm saying. Like, coming out from QE that I would love to have a civil discussion with him about, but I find it difficult because
You got to
I'm
spit
not
it right
sure
out.
why.
Humble H, listen, you got to spit it right
Sorry?
out. That's what the problem is. Just whatever you got on your mind, spit it right out. Don't hesitate.
Well, okay, in a sense, I think 10th has tried to address it on certain levels in a very civil way. And he, first of all, recognizing that Nathan is making no claims when it comes to being a Christian in that sense, or he believes in a creator. But when you go to the point, I feel, as identifying as a Christian, certain things are sort of expected of you, because if you're putting out something that is true at this level that we're discussing, something that's true, then our credibility is a big part of it, you see. And if somebody can question what should be the most important part of your life, which is your relationship with God and with Jesus Christ, if that's brought into question, why should they believe something you're telling them that,
They should.
is as important as flat Earth. Sorry?
They shouldn't. This isn't a believe genre.
Exactly.
And I agree with you on that. It is not. Well, okay. Let me put it this way. This is why it's tied into another discussion I was having with regards to QE and his. I don't want to. Yeah, really, it is a claim. I think I could safely say the claim that God has been scienced. And when I made that statement,
No,
it
that's
was
not what he
taken in
says.
two. No,
That's
no,
not what
please.
he
I'm
says.
just yeah, but if I think you'll understand when by the time I finish. That statement was taken in two different ways, and there was a discussion about how my question was actually addressed, or the statement was to be taken. I think QE got it right. Right? And because my question was ill-formed, but I think QE got it right. His reaction told me he understood what I was asking. But I think after listening, I really don't think there was a separation, because I don't think you can separate them. Like, when I say that, I'm saying God is the creator of everything. And when I say that, when I ask, okay, those men went into that lab, they did something with that contraption that they'd set up in this quantum eraser experiment, or whatever you call it. I'm going to tell you, I even went today and Googled the difference between slit and split, because I do make that mistake all the time. So I try to avoid that. But those men saw something in that experiment. And if you ask me, what I hear when I listen is that they saw something that made a connection with the spiritual, something spiritual. So they're working with something material that told them something spiritual is going on. I don't know how anybody feels about that assessment of what I'm saying. I'll listen for comments.
Well, they found something that was beyond the physical. Is that what you're trying to say? They
That
found
is
something beyond
exactly
physical
what I'm trying
explanation.
to say. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. And
Well,
so
did
if
you hear how easy John said it, though? That's all you had to
I'm
say.
sorry?
But that's all you had to
Oh,
say.
yeah. Right, but somehow I felt that there was some discomfort from others about that claim, because it is an extraordinary claim,
Yes, it
right?
is.
It's an
It is
yes.
That's why it takes extraordinary evidence.
I'm sorry.
That's why it takes extraordinary evidence.
That's right. So when I then asked, what is the extraordinary evidence? Like, I was trying to think of an illustration that one of these scientists who went into this room had scored like a hottie in university, who was like a cheerleader. And he comes home with a pile of these Eastern philosophical books under his arm, and she's saying, "What's going on?" And he said, "I saw something today in my lab that tells me there is a God." And she said, "Can you explain to me what you witnessed that told you that's made you this change in your life?" What would he actually say to her, knowing that, you know, I'm going to put myself in the place of that cheerleader wife who, we have this concept about them that they're not too bright. But I'm saying, what would he say to her? Or no, let me put it a different way.
Let me just
Huey
answer you.
said he
Let me just answer
actually
you. Let me just answer you. Knowledge is directly linked to causality. So what happens in the physical realm knowledge has a direct influence on what occurs in the physical realm. And without a knower, there is no knowledge. So your starting point for all things physical would be knowledge and a knower. So the starting point is God. The starting point would be a God or a knower to have knowledge, because that's the starting point. Things actualize in physical terms once you have knowledge. Therefore, there's a God or a creator. I don't care what you call it.
Okay,
That's amazing.
can I ask something then? Let me ask you something then, because in listening to Huey, he made an illustration about, I think he said, two people went to an island, went offshore, they saw an island there. They then left and went away, and they got killed. Another person came and went to that same spot where the island is, and the island doesn't have to be there.
That's correct. So this is, let's put it this way. When somebody asks you, if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a noise? The real answer is, there is no tree. That's the actual answer. So what does that mean? It means that based on our understanding and empirical evidence in regards to knowledge having an influence or cause over reality, we understand that without that knowledge, you don't have the actualization of the reality. So the other day we were trying to explain that if you set up a double slit experiment and you had cameras taking an image of which slit the light travels through, which I have to be careful with my words. In fact, now I've thrown it to the wind. Who cares? Travels through. Sod it.
Oh yes, sorry.
Right. So I'm done. I'm not done. This is complicated stuff. You're asking big questions, so they've got big answers. Okay. So once you've set up the camera and it's looking and it's putting it on a hard drive, right? It goes to a central office, and in the central office, it's storing the data. Okay. Now, a guy walks in to that setup that's linked to a different office somewhere else with a hard drive and looks at what's actually going on to the sensor or the photographic plate if they're doing it in a more crude way. And what he sees is a diffraction pattern. You go, what the hell? Surely we've gathered up this information and it's on the hard drive. Why is there a diffraction pattern there? Because at this point, it's recording on the hard drive. We've got the information. We know, don't we? Right? Now he's seeing no actualization, no collapse of wave function. He's just seeing the diffraction. He's seeing the interference only. Why? Well, because that night, the office building with the hard drive burns down, leaving no trace of the information. None. Ergo, when he walked in, causally, right, it was already deemed the case that you wouldn't have the information. Ergo, when someone checked on the experiment, there was no actualization, there was no knowledge, there was no gathering of the information. Like with the look out, there's a tiger behind you in Swahili, no one actually got the information. It never reached the knower. Nobody got to interpret it before the building burned down. But what bends your noodle is the fact that, and I can say this because of the delayed choice version of this experiment, that was already predetermined. So when he walked in and saw the diffraction pattern on the wall, because there's a slit detector, it would suggest you should see wave function collapse, but he didn't. So then when the building burned down, right, after the fact, that was why there was a diffraction pattern, because there was never going to be an opportunity for someone to gain the information. Now that was predetermined. So as much as we're critical of Becky in terms of her saying, you know, the future's set by Einsteinian mechanics, I can give that explanation with scientific validity behind it in the form of the double slit experiment and the delayed choice version. So with those two experiments, you can say, no, that is how it would be, because you need the information to have the actualization of those two bars, the wave function collapse as it's described in the experiment. Well, you wouldn't and you can't have that information if there's no person to receive it. And if it's lost for all time, to get back to the point that QE's making, that the island has never, for want of a better word, rendered. It never existed to begin with. There was no information in regards to it. So the guy goes out to the edges of wherever we know and finds that when he gets there, there's an island or a tree or whatever we're going to use in this example. And on the way back, to tell someone, I saw this island. In other words, pass the information on to another person and maybe give its location. If he dies, when someone goes back out there, it isn't necessarily the case that they'll see that. No, it isn't the case that they'll see that island, because it hasn't been rendered into existence because there's no information about it. So what does this all tell you? That there's a requirement for there to be information about whatever it is we're experiencing. So to take that one step further, number one, it proves there's a starting point. It proves that there must have been an outside influence to start that process, because without it, there is no start to the process. You have to have knowledge. You have to have a knower. So, further to that, what else can we say from it? Well, we can speculate, because this definitely isn't scientifically validated, that beyond the realms of what we know, given that we know we haven't got a sphere and a way back on ourselves in a kind of loop, what is at the edges? Well, that's the edges of known reality as opposed to the edges of a shape, which changes your outlook on life quite fundamentally. And as opposed to it changing your life because you're thinking about the infinite expanding, never to be reached edges of space, we're talking about how reality renders in physical terms in a very substantive and empirically validated way with these experiments. Now they not only do away with all of the heliocentric nonsense, like literally, quantum mechanics debunked Einstein. It does away with it. It doesn't comport. It isn't compatible. It doesn't work. But what it does do is progress our understanding of reality to a certain extent. It answers the ontological primitives. There must have been a knower. We can prove that experimentally. And it gives us some basis to move forward to start researching or investigating, potentially with aloof for scientific validity, when we look at the edges of our reality, whatever they may be. And I'm not speculating what they might be. I don't know. But what I do know from what John's told you and what I've tried to summarize in my crude way now is that there is an aspect of, you could say, us or the knower, the God at the beginning, that directly influences how our reality manifests. You have a massive influence on that. Now, in your day-to-day life, there's knowledge of most of the things that you experience, so this is never going to be an issue. Things aren't going to poof out of reality. Or may never be capable of, because the chances are everything's documented to the point where we will keep our reality exactly as it is because there's so much information about it. But if that information ceases to exist, then there is no rendering of that reality. There is no means for it to render, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to try and spin this into some sort of alternate computer-generated reality that we don't live in, because I don't think that's the case. Nevertheless, that's as good as I can give you. Could you explain that to a blonde tart? No.
Sorry, maybe I am a blonde tart, but here's my. It's. I don't know how much you've looked into Eastern philosophies, and I just this morning listened to that Sabine Hofstadter, whatever her name is, and she was discussing whether the past still existed. When I'm hearing what I'm hearing, I want to ask, and again, this is QE sort of area, and honestly, to me, he's a bit of a savant. Like, I just, what I want to ask is, would it then be wrong for someone in the Eastern philosophical community or way of thinking to say we are gods because when I went to that island, I created it?
Yes, my friend, you're getting somewhere.
I don't know if he is. Go on then,
Oh, he is.
Lord. You have your 2 pennyworth on this. Feel free.
This is where the mainstream consensus narrative is going to shift. Right? We already seen it happen. Remember back in the day when we stumped Rumpus with the physical horizon? And he said, well, if the horizon isn't there and it's not physical, then reality isn't real anymore. And I can't trust anything, right? So there's an aspect of the flat earth paradigm that shatters your reality as you know it. You then are an open slate to be imputed with a new basis for reality. Now, go away from the flat earth and go into mainstream physics. Mainstream physics, few key players and a lot of underplayers are starting to shift from materialistic explanations to consciousness-based explanations. So rather than the Higgs boson, a material small particle being the fundamental unit of reality, they're conceding that consciousness is the fundamental unit of reality and that it is the ultimate source of the render of the reality in which we experience. Now, from there, you have two options. Either this is caused by an external agent God, or humans themselves are gods. I'm just going to leave it there because you could see the philosophical implications.
Yes, you can. And there's a very, very dangerous path that you can fall down if you choose the latter. You've already validated scientifically that there must have been an external entity. That's a tick. You don't have to ask that question. So, in a sort of similar vein to the ontological primitives, if you've already got a tick in an either-or choice, unless you're suggesting that we are also gods, no, I think we've got a... If I take... I can diminish it so easily. Because it sounds great, right? When I rattled it off in the way I did, I'm trying to be careful with my words because I don't want people to go away thinking that I'm saying you're a god. I'm not, right? You can have a direct causal influence over many things because you've got arms and legs and you can physically interact with them, right? But because on a level of knowledge and information in the rawest form, in a hypothetical unrendered reality, we can give you an example that is only trying to explain how the delayed choice quantum eraser actually functions, which by comparison to this example is 100 million times more crude. We're not talking about rendering reality, we're talking about rendering two lines as opposed to diffraction patterns. It's just so far away from the example, it's just easy to slip onto this path. But if you can directly influence things in your reality, does that make you a god? No, I can directly influence things in my reality without having to render islands into existence in the example. Yeah, I can also influence others with mere words. Does that make me a god?
Right.
No.
Prove scripture that he built all this for us.
Sorry, I think AI wants to respond then, Adam. Go ahead. AI, was that you?
Yeah, so there's an ancillary point to this, which is apropos to the conflict that's going on within the flat earth community right now. And that is, obviously there's materialism on one side, all is matter, and there's idealism on the other side, all is pure consciousness. And then there's somewhere in the middle. But like you just said, if I can affect reality, does that make me a god? So if you take materialism out of the sense of concrete matter that's over there and exists of its own volition without any conscious input, right? That's one view. But then you take a view, well, how does matter formulate? Well, it needs a substrate from which to render itself, right? It needs some kind of base, the Lego bricks to build it. So a way of going by not saying that you're God is to say, well, God himself needs to be within a matrix of substrate that he can affect. So he needs essentially a physical matrix that's like a sub-physical, not yet manifested as concrete physical. Now, the ether idea has a chance of going that route. where they basically say that God himself is just part of the physical world. And of course, that leads you back to humans as God. So all of this is all about, like, how does creation be created, and who is the creator?
Right.
So it always comes back to those questions.
Exactly. And when you get back to that question, because your description included a physical manipulation of the fabric of our existence, which we cannot do. It violates the first law of thermodynamics. We're very much part of nature and we can't create it. Yeah, like in the same way nature can't create itself. Again, back to it must have had an external creator. It's back to the joke. Get your own dirt. What do you mean you can create life? You've advanced to that point as a man. Oh, well, what are you doing gathering up dirt that I created? Get your own dirt. Oh, you can't? First law of thermodynamics violation. Yeah, you've become so big-headed. And that's where this leads, right? There's a self-indulgent, grandiose path that you can find yourself on. And who's put you on it? Well, you have. Your own self-indulgence. Why? Well, because you want to be a god, don't you? That's what this boils down to. And I think that path leads to things like heliocentrism. I think that's where that path begins. And it's a path of delusion and power. That's really where you end up with things like heliocentrism. Because you've seen a little bit of information, you've gained a bit of knowledge, it's greater than the person below you. And with a bit of philosophy behind you, you can envisage the idea of you being a bloody god.
Well, you know, I can give an
sickening.
example of someone. I can give an example of someone believing they're a god.
Can you do it after
a
Adam?
statement they made.
I think Adam wanted to get something in. Can you, sorry, John, can you just wait till Adam's got his words in, and then if you can hold that thought. Go ahead, Adam.
I was just chipping in there. I think this is the point, and I just heard it described a little bit there by Overlord. Our egos become so inflated that we construct a mechanism by which we think we can understand how spirit thoughts manifest. And we assign these things, and therefore we then give ourselves control of these things. In relation to the bit I chirped in on, in terms of what does it show? It shows that this whole reality was designed for our interaction. It renders for us, renders for the knower. It doesn't put me on a pedestal. It just shows the majesty of what's been done for me to have these experiences.
Yeah, it makes you, for me and Adam, it makes you more humble, more grateful, more appreciative of life, more appreciative of nature. That's what it should offer you. But for some, it doesn't.
Or if you realize that, if you realize something like this,
John, then 10th. Go ahead, John.
There's a statement that was made by someone who is leading the Ethereans, who said that there is no natural phenomenon. Everything is just antiquitech. Why would he say something like that?
I don't know, just pseudoscience wizardry, perhaps?
No, he thinks that he's destined to know everything.
Oh, in other words, we are the sole cause of it all, therefore there's nothing to preclude me knowing all of it because we were the origin, and therefore I can find it out. The knowledge is available to me because it was us that came up with it. That sort of circular reasoning.
Yes.
If you elevate
for a rude awakening.
10th first. Go ahead, 10th. Was it 10th that was trying to get in? Maybe it was you, Adam. Go ahead.
No, it was
I was trying to say something. Oh, sorry.
Okay, after Adam. Go ahead, Adam.
Okay, so what? That's sounding like there was another kind of trick. You again, you convince yourself that you have some understanding of the construction of reality. You convince yourself that you're not created by God, that you're just a fractured splinter of God, so that God can experience everything for himself, and therefore you convince yourself you are God, and therefore all this knowledge is available to you here, on the premise that you are just actually God, just experiencing himself. I think that's Buddhism summed up, really. But again, it's all based on a premise of you kidding yourself that you understand the foundations of how God set everything up. Again, I don't yearn for that. I often wonder why people look for that as a solution to deify themselves. It's a strange.
Adam, isn't
Oh, I
that
can answer
pride?
that. Hold on, Neil. We'll get humble in a second, but I can answer that. That's fear of death. That's all that is.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Pride.
Yeah, I
Well,
could
I'll
proffer you an idea that's laid
Hold
out
on,
in the
AI.
majority
Hold on,
of
AI.
Western
You hold that
religions.
thought.
Go ahead.
Hold on. Go ahead, humble, and then we're going to start a live show actually. But go ahead, humble.
Oh, okay. This may be a bit long then, so maybe well, maybe in the after show. Well, let me say this. Here's my fear that I'm trying to put things together. I'm seeing people who would take one thing. The most absurd one I saw was Professor Dave take one drop of water, looked at the way it acted, and then blew that up to a globe. We all laughed. I then heard in the quantum physics, they take a particle of light. And it wasn't until yesterday I realized why just mentioning that would be a difficulty because there's some tying to the ether. That's not my thing. I'm saying taking one particle of light, looking at what it does in a lab, and coming out the other end proving God. I also listened to this Sabine Hofstetler, this woman that's on there, seems very intelligent. She also takes a very small thing that is claimed to be established science, and out of that says there's no free will.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by, can't see because I've got my studio lights on and not got the remote in my hand, Neil, Righteous Force, Refracted Curvature, 10th Man Rising, Brian's Logic, the Adam Meakin, Arwin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome, one and all.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. Hello, baby.
Friday.
It's Friday, but we don't normally mention that. Okay, we're going to do a quick shout out. So if you're watching this live, which hopefully you are now, you'll pick up this from the chat. But one of our own is moving and is requiring some financial support in order to do so. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least support Neil in his endeavour to raise a few quid. And I'm going to stick the share to this GoFundMe campaign that Neil set up yesterday. I was unaware of it till about 12 hours ago. But yeah, please support one of our own, Neil, in his endeavour to move to a place that won't cost him an absolute fortune to live and will hopefully benefit his children in terms of more opportunities. He's also got a job lined up there, and it's going to cost him a bucket load of money to actually move to, is it Alabama, Neil? Is that right? Is it Alabama you
Where are
going?
you going?
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Alabama.
So check it out.
Alabama.
There's a link. If nothing else, as I say with every single GoFundMe, if you can't afford to support Neil, please go and share the GoFundMe campaign. So just click on the share button and stick it on your Facebook page. You know, it's always good to help out a friend, and we're a tight-knit community in this regard. I know Neil will get some support. The other thing I will say, when you do use the GoFundMe campaign, it automatically tries to stick a 15% tip on. So once you've inputted an amount, what you have to do, if I'm going to give Neil $20 for the sake of argument, is reduce this amount down to 0, so you're only actually contributing the amount that you want to contribute rather than giving GoFundMe money. They do take a small cut from whatever it is that you raise anyway, so you know, don't feel guilty about it. But that's it. Yeah, so I've stuck a link in the live stream chat, and yeah, so hopefully you'll all go away and support Neil in his expensive endeavour to move. So yeah, there we go. That's how we're going to start out this show, along with a super chat. Go on.
About Neil's GoFundMe, very quickly. That Neil had his working life completely disturbed and brought to a halt due to COVID, like a lot of people out there. And he ended up then, the house he's been living in, all of a sudden, he now has to leave due to the landlord. So he needs to get, this was something he wanted to do, but it wasn't supposed to happen for another year or so when he had money to do it. But all that fell apart, and now he has to go. So he needs a bit of help. Thank you.
Right, it's an emergency.
Yeah, indeed. So Fibroach says, help Neil, deal. Thank you very much for the super chat. So yeah, hopefully you'll all support Neil in his move. Let's do a bit of housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Negative.
Has anybody got a video lined up to critique today? Or are we just going to be relaxed and doing a chit-chat? What are we doing? Anybody know? I'm reactive, man. I don't care.
Yeah, you should finish the one you left off yesterday.
There's a bunch of them on TikTok.
We finished that video.
Planet Peterson. Check out Planet Peterson on TikTok.
Oh, God.
No, you can't promote that someone goes and checks anything out anywhere other than on YouTube. That's definitely not the case. Has he got a YouTube channel? Because if so, I mean, yeah, just, I don't know, if you can get it in a link to whatever video.
I believe ideally, he does. It's Planet Peterson.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm running a live show. So, yeah, I mean, I could spend 10 minutes looking that up and maybe finding where that video is. But unfortunately, I'm running a live show. So if you did want to link it in one of the chats, then maybe we can go to it. But that would be really handy. And the same goes for the audience for that matter, right? So if there's a video, a couple of people have done this, but maybe you've not got the right idea. So I don't want to be mean to anybody. One of my Patreons sent me a link to a video and was like, hey, check this out. As in, can you critique this? Maybe he didn't mean that. But anyway, that particular video, just to cover it now, was saying that you can measure the distance to the sun off a flat plane with angles. Now, on surface level, that seems reasonable, right? No, it isn't. Yeah, it changes. And when it goes further away, it's a lower angle. Does that mean it's lower to the ground? No, it does not. Of course not. Now, number one, we don't know what the sun is. And number two, I don't necessarily want to critique what seems like somebody with good intentions. Just your average Joe Flat Earther. Yeah, he's talking nonsense. I won't disagree with that. But in the scheme of things, I'm not saying he's not worth our time to critique, but it doesn't have an overriding point that we don't generally make in the housekeeping questions like now, and I'm hoping someone will answer in that vein when I ask it. Any evidence of the distance to the sun on a flat Earth?
No.
So yeah, we're not going to critique that video. Basically, you can't measure or utilize the angles if they're altering across the surface of a flat plane because it's getting closer to the horizon as it moves. I'm going to use this carefully into the perceived distance. Is that Brian? Hopefully.
Yeah. Sorry, my hands were wet. Yeah, you can't do that, and the reason you can't do that is that if you have to use trigonometry, which is internal angles and the lengths of the sides of a triangle. So if you do that at 45 degrees and you do that at 46 degrees and you do it at 44 degrees, you get three different heights. So it can't be done. It's an apparent height because you're measuring with angles, which means you're measuring perspective. You'll never know just by measuring perspective what height it is.
Exactly.
We don't even know if it has a height.
Well, you'd need one of two things. You'd need its actual distance to begin with, which negates, trying to get it. Or you'd need its actual size. because then you can translate it from its angular size into the distance. You can back calculate it. But you're going to need one of those things, and you don't have any of them. All you have is an apparent size of the sun. That's it.
Yeah, and it's mostly just, it comes from the ballers telling flat earthers you can do this, so you should be able to do this. And flat earthers are going off doing it. You're like, no, the ballers know before you do it. Well, they actually didn't know until I pointed it out to them that you can't do it. But they knew that flat earthers could do what they would do, and then the ballers could then critique it and debunk it. They knew they could debunk it, but they didn't realize why it doesn't work. They thought it didn't work because they can come up with some globe nonsense. No. So when you hear a baller telling you should be able to do this on a flat earth, that means they already have a physical assumption bias of the sun, number one. And number two, they're pre-assuming a load of different things. And it means they also don't understand what angles are and what you're actually measuring. So don't do that. They're making a fool of you when you do that. Don't do it. They're also go on.
Presumption that they presume is that they're going to go and do trigonometry when navigating. They're not. And the rules of trigonometry do not apply. The rules of right-angled triangles make sense, and that's what's applied within celestial navigation. But when we do celestial navigation, we're not doing basic trigonometry, which is why the side length, the height to the star, that length for the GP, it's why it remains theoretical. It's just an arbitrary height. We're not doing trigonometry.
Dave has signed infinite distances so that light can come in parallel. They don't even do it. They don't even claim that they do it.
Okay, so there's a couple of things just to round out my point, which is to say that if you've got a particular video, not necessarily some no-name flat earther that's making assertions that aren't right, that isn't really what we're trying to go after. It's more the fact that there's people who do have an influence, a very large influence, influencers as they're named, that are out on the circuit making incorrect assertions that do make us look bad. The second thing is to say, whenever you hear a globe earth assertion, and then you're asked, well, how does that work on a flat earth? Try and remember this. The reason you're being asked that is because they will have a positive claim in that regard. So once you understand that the reason you're being asked to explain why the sun disappears beyond the horizon, for example, how does that work on a flat earth? How do you explain sunsets? You might have heard that as a flat earther. There's two things to that. Do you make a claim about sunsets proving a flat plane? Do you need to make a claim with a sunset in regards to anything? If the answer is no, then ask yourself why you're being asked to defend it. Then you'll realise much easier that the reason you're asked to defend it is because it's far easier to go on the attack for your opponent's position that you need to actually promote. So if you're making a positive claim, it's much easier to get your opponent to defend their version of your positive claim, potentially before you even claim it. So then you've got them on the back foot when you've got your presupposition to put forward. They failed in their explanation for something they didn't claim if I'm using that trick as a globe believer. So I'm going to make a claim about how the seasons work with an orbital presupposition and an R value in the maths. I'm going to do that. I'm going to ask you, the flat earther, how do you explain your seasons on your flat earth model? So go through the process. Do I need to make a claim about how the seasons work? Am I making a claim about how the seasons work? Do I need to justify how the seasons work? No, I don't, do I? No, I'm not, am I? No, I won't be, will I? So why am I being asked that? Oh, because they have a positive assertion on the globe side that they need to defend, not you. So put them on the back foot. All right, you've got an explanation for how the seasons work. Let's hear it. Sorry, that needs an R value. Why are you assuming we're falling around rocks? Why are the rocks in a sky vacuum? You just pull their positive claim apart. And at the end, when it lies dying in tatters or in flames, metaphorically speaking, and they turn around to you and say, well, does it work on a flat earth? No, I'm not making a claim about it. But you can then come back at them with a positive claim about how the flat earth is proven, like elevation angle measurements, for example. So you can then make your positive claim that you do want to defend, and then see how they get on with your positive claim that's irrefutable, and use the world over for navigating, as opposed to trying to explain how bloody sunsets and seasons work because they have a positive claim that they need to defend. Just pull apart their claim. It was our main criticism of the debate techniques used by Hibbler and Jeranism, Dave Weiss and Whitsitt. They're on the back foot the whole time because they're feeling the need to explain positive assertions from the opponent's side, rather than taking apart the positive claims, which are coming rapid fire. And further to that, they make the even more heinous mistake of trying to make their own positive assertions that they don't have empirical evidence to back. So they're being put on the back foot for the claims they're not making, and they're making up shit as they go along about the world they think they live in, to also make them look bad. Hence, total defeat was the outcome. But if you can recognise, when you're being asked to prove something, that it isn't necessarily the case that you've got any reason whatsoever to be trying to prove that, you then put yourself in a much positive position, more positive position in debate, because you can start asking them to justify their claim. Hope that ramble made it absolutely clear. I summarised it 3 times because I think it's a very important point. Basically, this is avoidance of flipping the burden.
And it's a very... I'm echoing. And
No, we both started talking. Go ahead. I'll go after you.
thank you. Yeah, Nathan, you're making a very, very good point, actually.
So,
It might be a trick. It's like a trick. What they do is they kind of play into our, if we have it still, youthliness to want to be right about things, like a kid, like wanting to do good to their parents, right? So they basically pull the flat earther in to start making assertions so that they can criticize that. And then the flat earther actually never gets to the real problem, which lies with the assertions of the belief of the baller. But they basically pull you in using your own enthusiasm, like, oh, I know this, haha. I'm so happy that I know this detail. But by going into it in that moment, they trick you, and then they got you. They got you by your enthusiasm. And
well,
they're scot-free.
your desires as a flat earther are often torn because once you find out you've been lied to about, say, the sky, it then raises the question, what is the sky? So you'll be pondering it and many aspects of the world that you don't know now. So when someone comes along and goes, well, how do you explain it? There's a burning desire in your own, your internal mechanism that wants to explain it. Well, they're just feeding off that. Yeah, and it's not because they're somehow great trained psychologists. It's just it reeks from flat earthers that we're lusting for the knowledge. Yesterday in the after show, we were talking about how that's taken advantage of by flat earthers. For example, I've just disseminated, and Arwin's complimented. Thank you, Arwin. I was joking when I said, yeah, I know, it's a good point. But we're trying to disseminate a tool, a weapon that you can use in the battle of flat Earth versus globe Earth when you're out talking about it with somebody who might ask you to explain the seasons when you don't need to. So you can take that away, put it in your back belt. Next time someone asks you to explain something, you go, easiest answer, if you want the concise version of that, I'm not claiming that. I haven't claimed that. When did I claim that? Those are the answers you should give. You probably hear me saying it when I'm talking to fundies. I haven't claimed that. When did I claim that? You got a quote? Yeah? Because they're asking me to explain their claim. I've got a point at the end of this, Arwin. My point is that this is the gravy, and you've just had it. Now, if you choose, turn off the show, go away, on with your day. That's probably, I'm not going to say it's the only useful thing that will come out of the show. There'll be plenty more. But that's something useful that you can take away and know next time you're put on the spot to explain something you haven't claimed, that you can use to refute it and move on with your positive assertions or debunking their claim that goes along with the reversal of proof that's happened. Now, I'm not saying that information, right, which could have been tucked away on a little video and put for members only, and then I could have said, right, well, there is a technique that you could use to stop the burden of proof being flipped. Go and become a member, and I'll let you in on the secret. Now, in that case, I'd be selling that tool as a useful tool, and it would be legitimate because you'd go there and you'd find that information out. But it seems a bit weaselly, a bit crap, even if it's a real tool. That's reasonable. Plenty of people put their stuff behind paywalls. And a lot of it's speculation, but in this case, my example would be a genuine tool. Same as talking about science and the scientific method to overcome fundies' arguments with science when they haven't got any. Same principle. That could all be tucked behind a paywall. It isn't. It's, as Adam summarised, this is all me reiterating, and a point that's come from Meekin, by the way, totally stealing his thunder and owning this. Anyway, after the fact, I can say smash the super chat to support this channel. In other words, there's a good chance there'll be another tidbit tomorrow, and you don't have to pay a dime. But I do need to pay the rent, and so does Neil need to move. So, you know, go and support the GoFundMe, and hopefully give me money, because we need to live. But it doesn't alter the fact that every single person that comes here has no obligation, and they're still going to walk away with the same exact usefulness in terms of the information that they've gathered. Now, by contrast... Go on.
No, I was just going to say, I used to fall into that all the time until I learned that on this show from you, that I don't have to explain the seasons, because who might explain anything anyway? How do I know? I learned how to get out of it by listening to this show.
Not getting out of it, it's just understanding when you make a claim, the burden is on you to prove it. If you haven't made a claim, there's no necessity or burden on you. Now, if somebody's asking you, you're saying, why are they asking? Well, because they've got a burden to satisfy, and the chances are they can't satisfy it. And it's much easier to make their weak argument if you failed first. That's why it's done. But my point was that in our community, and this is discussed on yesterday's after show, which will come out on Monday on my second channel. So you can watch it now if you're a member. This discussion between all of us on the panel about a very particular video that was promoting a Rockfin paywall for gravy information that's fantastic. Now, based on the 10-minute clip that we saw, there's charlatanism that's being sold. Woo-woo nonsense that's not going to benefit you in the slightest. It's not going to give you any tools to defeat any arguments. It's not going to prove the nature of your Earth. It's just speculation that's come from 2015 with cartoons to sell you a Vedic way of thought. That's all it is. Now, given that it's being punted out as you can pay for this truth, it's a load of gravy, and we're being called scammers by these people for disseminating the truth of science and the scientific method, suddenly all the pieces have come together why that actually happened. Basically, there's a scam going on within Flat Earth. A scam using woo-woo religions to sell you into a worldview. And that's being punted by people who are using and abusing the terms of science, as I've been saying since I went on Globebusters about 4 years ago, and asked them politely if they could at least consider the idea of real science rather than the nonsense we got lied to with. Obviously, that had a massive detrimental effect on me, my growth, my channel, my income, all of the rest of the things. Now, that's continued recently in a proactive manner after Witsit Gets It, if you're not familiar with this recent endeavour, came here to promote this nonsense that they're now punting out on Rockfin for cash. Well, when we took it apart based on its lack of scientific validity, we were then attacked as science scammers because we stand in direct contradiction of their pseudoscience claims that they're asking people to donate, in quotes, money for. So, as that was again the discussion in part of the pre-show today, we're in a weird position where we've been attacked as scammers, and we've had to go into why are we being attacked as scammers when we're not. Yes, I ask for money. Everybody needs to live. That's how life is. Yes, I'd like it if people smashed the super chat and gave me PayPals and joined as memberships and all the rest of it. But it doesn't alter what happens on the show. Further to that, if you want to watch that discussion with all of the video being taken apart by all of the panel members, you can watch it for free on Monday, because I released the members-only information to the public several days later. But the point is, that's why we've got to address it. Typically, we just left them to it. Right, Adam? This didn't get discussed yesterday, but I'm going to re-bring it up now. We didn't care. Go do your paywall. We're not attacking John LeBon for his sync nonsense. I mean, his sync opinions. You know, that's his own opinion, and he can put it behind a paywall if he chooses to and promote it however he chooses. But he's not calling us scammers because we point out the lack of scientific validity when he claims it, if he does or doesn't. I don't know. I'm not a paid member of John LeBon's website. But I get a vague idea of what he talks about. Now, maybe it needs to be put behind a paywall for you know, to avoid criticism from the open public, who are generally, you know, not going to take into consideration some of the nuances and details that he thinks are important. But simultaneously, he's not attacking us as scammers, so who cares? But when we are, obviously we've got to look into why, and it's because it's projection. There are actually scammers in the flat Earth, and we know who they are. We've got evidence to that effect. And they're proactively calling us out as scammers for that reason, because they need to promote their scam and promote their shit that's not scientific behind a paywall. And we're a threat to that.
I raise this because we appear to be part of the scam. They appear to be using us, or certainly the information we've shared over the past 5 or 6 years with them needed to be challenged, didn't it, to make this scam work? So it wasn't just attacking us first. The first attack was on scientific method, it proving things when we were given silly hypotheses that would supposedly prove that science could change. These things were challenged, rebutted, and it's after that that we were then called scammers. Remember, yeah. So this is why I wanted to speak out, demonstrate this, and demonstrate the text from their side, where they're saying, if you want the gravy, more truth, pay first, and then you'll get it. That is fundamentally scamming. That's not what I got into this for, and why I continue. I don't take a penny out of this game. You know what I mean? I'm lucky enough to earn my own living separately, and I do this for spreading the truth. I used to believe everybody was in it for that, and if they're not, that's absolutely fine. But to use us and the work we're doing to support your scam is the point where I stand up and point out your scam, you scammers.
Quick shout out to Uncle Ben. And thank you for the super chat. He didn't say anything. It just gives me money. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate the support. Also, Humble, can you pop yourself on mute when you're not talking? You're causing all sorts of chaos. Thank you. So yeah, check that out. That'll come out on Monday if you want to see the full discussion and dissection of the video that's promoting this paywall nonsense. Then check it out. It'll come out on the second channel. If you remember, go and check it out now. The video that we talked about yesterday, that'll come out tomorrow. Go on, Owen.
Sorry. Just a quick joke. So you're not gonna make a behind the paywall explain video about that Vedic picture and how it explains Dick Earth? Because I was really looking forward to that.
No, I mean the things I put behind a paywall. I do put a few videos on Patreon. I know this isn't going to be particularly fascinating and it's a boring segue, but I'm going to say it anyway. What I put on Patreon is my projector's bust. In other words, hint, hint, I need money. That's the sort of thing I put on, right? My amp's blown up. Here's me doing a tweeter repair. That's the kind of thing I put on Patreon. Now, I gotta be honest, even the Patreons aren't that interested, right? But it's my way of showing what I spend the money on. That's really all it is. And half the time, it's when I need more than I'm getting anyway. In other words, I live off the patronage. That's what I actually do. As much as in the blurb it says, oh, it goes towards keeping the show maintained. Well, yeah, it goes to keeping the roof over my head that keeps the show maintained. But then when something actually busts, I normally do what, like Neil's doing. If you need more, you just have to put your hand out. So please help me. And it's humiliating. Nobody wants to e-beg. Even the people who are big YouTubers, when they're punting their merch, I know that they feel a little bit dirty about it. Yeah, that's just how it is. Right? And obviously nobody wants to say, I need your help. I would prefer, as I said in yesterday's show, and I aspire to be like Professor Dave Explains YouTube channel. Where you can put a video out and get 12 million views on it with the subject Flat Earth in the title, with a crap thumbnail with absolutely no effort that he's done with a Google search, stock image. That gets 12 million views. All right. That's what I aspire to. I'm a YouTuber. What's that? He covers globe Earth. Pfft. No, I don't like that. No, we cover something different. But it wouldn't make any difference if I was comparing myself to a gardening channel as a YouTuber. You just want the exposure that you would hope you get. Now, given that in Congress they've told YouTube, make sure the preferred content is what people receive first. What's preferred content? Well, anyone saying we're wrong? That's how it works. Okay. I have to accept that and then realise that, yeah, it's slightly humiliating to put your hand out, but I will. Please smash the super chat. In all sincerity. I'll do that. Why not? I've got to live to run the show. And YouTube doesn't sustain that, unfortunately, through ad revenue. If it did, I wouldn't have to e-beg. And it would be lovely if I didn't have to e-beg. But I'm not scamming anybody. That's what I've been accused of. Why? Because we're part of a scam, aren't we? I want Adam to reiterate it again because I want to move on from this subject and maybe draw a line under it. We'll see.
Yeah. So for me, the reason I spoke out this week was it's been curious why we were dragged into this, why things that we agreed, why somebody like Jaron would
You okay, Eleanor?
and saying science doesn't prove anything. It's become apparent now as we see that their truth is only attainable through a paywall. And this is the point why they attack science, why they attacked us, because fundamentally they're selling you a set of encyclopedias, aren't they? They're trying to sell you some ropey bit of knowledge, but for you to believe what they're telling you, you've got to abandon the scientific method. You have to. That's why science can't prove things, because if it did, it's going to demonstrate that they're not proving anything to you. So it was important to undermine those principles first before you then go on to the Church of Ether, become a convert and hand over your tithes.
Right on. So what do we do
I'm
now?
still waiting.
I'm
still waiting.
Go on, Brian.
I think it was before me, Nathan.
Yeah. We have Professor Dave on airplanes, part 3, and Brian's ready to help. So that's in Master D when you're ready.
So just a point, just to maybe draw.
Sorry, Brian. Sorry. Where did you say it was?
Master D, Master Debaters.
I was going to say, this is... yes, that's why we did it out of order, because we wanted Brian to be here. It's not at all. It's just the way it worked out, but there we go. Okay, give me a couple of minutes. If you can talk amongst yourselves, I'll get this all queued up.
What were you saying, Brian?
Yeah, a point to refract the curve which I made yesterday afterwards was that what's going on with Jaronism and Bob and them is with this Rockfin thing, what they're actually doing is isolating their audience. Because when they get their audience to pay the donation and go to their Rockfin page, what happens is the audience then don't hear any other, they don't get any other views that are contradictory to that. So they isolate their audience. So the audience pays to hear what they want to tell the audience. And we're not there to tell the audience, no, this is not correct, and you can't, or to point out where it's morally wrong or whatever.
How are they isolating them? I mean, they can still go to YouTube channels. I mean, but what I think is rather happening is that because they have paid money to get the information, the investment makes it valuable to them. It's like the scam effect. They bought into it. Now they have to hold on to it. I think that's rather the effect, right? Because they bought it. They bought the information. If it turns out to be shitty, well, they won't like that. So they'll probably reinforce that it's valuable in their minds because they paid for it.
Right, but you're commenting on another possibility, which is very true, and Brian's commenting on another possibility, which is very true.
Right, it's
They're certainly trying to isolate them. They're trying to isolate them through peer pressure, but nobody's technically preventing those same people that buy those videos from them to also go to YouTube to FED. I mean, who's literally stopping them? Nobody.
How would you?
Not that
Hold on. How would you refute something that you didn't hear, Arlen?
I'm not talking about the content. I'm talking about the effect of participating.
No, I ain't disagreeing with that, but I'm saying there may be another reason for having it behind a paywall. Because if you can't hear the information, you're not going to be refuting it.
Right. So you tell your audience that look at these guys over here talking about science proves things. What a bunch of scammers. Yeah? You understand that? Science proving things is a scam. Now come and have a look at my stuff behind a paywall. Yeah? Now if we are the ones that are disseminating how their bullshit is bullshit and it's all behind a paywall and they've told the people who come and pay for it that we talking about science are all scammers, then everything's all lined up nicely, isn't it? All the ducks are in a row.
Yeah, it's very
Exactly.
cultish.
See, once you get the people to pay for the Rockfin donation and go and watch it on Rockfin, Arwen's point is very correct. Once they paid for this, they didn't give it more relevance because they had to pay for it.
Yep.
You know, when people get something for free, it's psychological. They think it's not as good. Whereas when you pay for it, people start thinking that it's worth something. But
Right.
not only then do we not refute those claims because we
Becomes
don't hear them,
personal.
but people start viewing the information they're getting as more important than it really is.
I'm going to
Not saying
reiterate
that they
Arwen's point a bit
value
more.
it.
Hold on, Arwen. So I saw this while I was researching computer components, right? So there's a certain faction of people on a forum that have gone out and purchased an item. In other words, they've handed over money for a certain thing. And then in the review that the video's about, the person reviewing it puts the item they've bought below a standard of something else. In other words, it's not as good as what they're reviewing. Now, the person in that instance will go nuts in the comments or in the forum or whatever. This person's an idiot. They don't know how to test. They don't know what they're doing with the equipment. Their procedures are all wrong. Their benchmarks are all wrong. Because they're trying to affirm their own bias and their own purchase. I couldn't have purchased the wrong thing. There couldn't be something better than the thing I've purchased. This guy just doesn't know what he's talking about. That's what it does once you've actually handed over money. You seek your own affirmation that you've purchased the right thing. I did it with this computer without actually handing any of my own money over. I did a GoFundMe, raised an amount to upgrade the current computer. Someone bought me a computer, and then I used all of the money that wasn't mine to begin with, that was donated, to buy a monitor, accessories, cables. But I still went through the process after I got the computer of going, the RAM runs at this speed and costs this amount of money. Is it worse than something that's a slower speed and cheaper? It's not very good value. And you start mentally doing these gymnastics for the justification for the price versus performance of something because it's already been purchased. So you start second guessing yourself. And if someone said, you just bought the wrong memory, should have bought DDR4 instead of DDR5, you're an idiot. You don't understand how DDR5's better. That's what you get because there's been a transaction. So once you've got somebody on the hook and they're in your whatever the paywall provider video supported network is that you're a part of, once they've given over the money and they've gone and listened to the stuff and everyone in the comments is all, yeah, this is going to change our world. We're going to get free energy. We're going to be gods. You go, yeah, we are going to be. And someone comes along like us and says, where's the scientific experimentation for it? Yeah? Unless you've already poisoned the well and pointed out to that person that the person that's going to ask you for the scientific evidence is a scammer, then, you're going to have that guy just going out and blindly defending whatever nonsense he's paid for because he's well behind it. He's already paid for it. So it's the same way instead of a financial sense, when you talk to academics about heliocentrism, right? They have invested, and in some cases financially as well, their time into this subject. It has an inherent value. Value doesn't necessarily just mean pound notes or dollars. It means how much intrinsic worth does it have to a person. Now, if you've invested your life into heliocentrism, look at Phil Bell as an example, right? A lot of his career is dedicated to the notions of heliocentrism. So he has got a huge, I don't want to say financial because it isn't, but a huge value ascribed to that thing. Now, every time he comes along and says, you know what you're talking about when you talk about Coriolis effect with a merry-go-round or a roundabout or what, it's not Earth. It's like, no, what you're doing is defending that RAM that you purchased, because you don't want to be seen to be an idiot when you've already invested in that RAM, or in his case, invested much of his professional career in the notion of what his professional career is for. And in this case, it's heliocentrism. That's why he's here. To defend his biases. That's all he's here for. Pain relief. Yeah? To tell us, you're an idiot, you haven't benchmarked the Earth properly. That's what he's doing.
Exactly. People have too much pride. They don't want to admit that what they paid for is not the real deal.
No one wants to be scammed. And often people will support the scammers. Yeah, it's a bit like that. Is it Munchausen syndrome? I've forgotten what it's called when the kidnappee falls in love with the captor. I've forgotten the term for it.
Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm syndrome. Yeah, there we go. Here in the end. It's like Stockholm syndrome. Yeah, once you've invested in something, you want to defend it. You want to, go out of your way to show that no, the court hasn't brainwashed me. Oh, okay. But being duped is far, far harder on a person after the fact than before the fact. If you say, look, that's a con, this is how the con works. You get an email and they tell you that your account's going to be shut down and you need to give them their password so they can update it. Then they get your password. Whereas the guy who's given out the password and is still talking to the Indian scam center and they're saying, no, we can get your passwords back. We just need your credit card details now. When you're trying to tell that person, no, they're never going to give you your password back. Ever. No, and that person will tell you, no, they're just asking for £50. If I just give them the £50, I can end all this now. No, once you've given them £50, they'll want another 100. No, they won't. They're telling me they've got my password. They've shown it me in a secure location. Ugh. You can't convince that person. They end up literally defending the scammer.
Yeah, if you take on board someone like Professor Dave, where someone like him, doesn't have to be him, just he's an example, a handy example, who has made a persona based on heliocentrism and being against anything outside of heliocentrism, whether it's us or anything else, then how does he actually say to himself, hang on, it's not a globe? He can't. He's stuck. He can't say that to himself.
And there's rewards out there. I mean, that's the only sort of downside to us on the flat Earth side. When I talk about in a happy way that the anti-flat Earthers are trapped down here in hell with us. The ones that are contemplating the idea of flat Earth, going through the mental gymnastics of unjustifying how the Earth is flat, so that they can sit back in line with the blue pill reality that they've been fed before they started considering it. Those are anti-flat earthers here in hell with us. Well, it's not hell for me. It's just poverty. It's not hell. Just poor. There's no flames. There's no damnation. But there is for them. They see it as the end of the world. But it's also quite lucrative, right? So at least they're getting paid well. Professor Dave, oh, Ryan, you into this flat earth thing on YouTube? Oh, no, definitely not. With a big, massive smile on his face as he counts all the coins coming in from the revenue of the ads that we don't see. Yeah? So it might be that he's going through the same mental pain as someone like Conspiracy Cats when, well, if it was flat, I'd have to consider all the other lies I've fallen for. He might be going through that process. That's probably why he's here. He's an anti-flat earther after all. But, like I say, at least it's lucrative for him. And Dan. And whoever else.
Yeah, they end up being scammers because the only other option is to admit that they're wrong.
Right. So they keep buying into it, buying more and more into the idea that they must silence the opponent because they're in their own mind recognizing slowly that they're wrong and where they're wrong when it's pointed out that they're wrong and how they're wrong. So they double down on these people are idiots, let's censor them out of existence. Why haven't they got laser beams trained on them and the government going round and killing them? That was Dave's attitude. So very passionate about it then, Dave. Yeah, I don't have those thoughts about you. Ever. I don't think, I wish Dave was censored out of existence. I wish Fight the Flat Earth was blown up with bombs. I never think that. I don't actually ever give him any thought at all. Proactively, zero. Reactively, it's part of my show. Great fun when we pull apart the numpty nonsense of them live. But it doesn't have any influence over my life. But for Dave, he's thinking about us having lasers trained on us, literally.
But isn't that where pride comes in? Instead of coming to the reality, coming to the truth, they double down. Isn't that pride?
Yeah, and it's encouraged. They're paid for it.
Recently,
surely though, as well. Sorry, guys.
No, go on one deck.
Go on one deck.
To be given some truth.
Go on one deck.
And one of us or somebody goes in there and debunks that truth, obviously you'd be asking for your money back. And at that point, is any sort of legal sort of implications then?
It depends on the scale of the scam. If they've just led you along a garden path of woo-woo, then no, I wouldn't say you've got any repercussions. They had information, in quotes. You paid for it and listened to it. What was the transaction? The transaction was viewing the material. If the material was Whitsitt sat with two joysticks, legs crossed, going for 5 hours, and that was the good gravy, and you went, oh, I want my money back. Well, tough luck. That was the material. What, you didn't like it? Oh, well. You're going to a play, and it's touted as the best thing you've ever seen, and it's two people sat cross-legged with joysticks for 2 hours going, and you go, I want my money back. The theatre owner goes, no, you sat and watched it. Or if you walked out immediately, I want my money back. Nope. You don't like it? All right. Bye-bye. Don't come again.
Yeah, it's like if you pay to go into a gay nightclub and you don't know what's gay till you go in there.
Speaking from experience, Brian, how did that go?
Easy.
I knew that was going to happen. I knew I was going to get labelled with that. But no, I'm just saying, if that happened, what can you do?
Have a laugh. I've been into plenty of gay nightclubs. Gay nightclubs have a lot more fun going on because there's stuff going on, actually things happening that are exciting. Not to do with the sexuality between men, just the fact that there's an atmosphere. So I had plenty of gay friends back when I was out on the party scene, and they would take me to their clubs, and I go, wow, this is a lot more fun. Not getting laid at the end of the night, but that's okay, I'm still having a laugh.
Gay nightclubs have a lot of the best looking women in them because the women go there because they're not going to get hassled by
That was going to be my next point. But yeah, I didn't pull any of them either. But there was, you're right.
But, it's recently Conspiracy Cats has had a couple of debates, and supposedly, I did hear one of them with Flatside, and he's had another one with Whitsitt or something like that. And supposedly, in the second one, he was like he was in the first one, which is very nasty, very, combative. It's like he was never that way. It's like that tells you that he's under serious pressure. He was supposed to have left there. He said, see you later, handed his channel over to MC Tune or somebody, and see you later, and best of luck, and off into the sunset. And now he's back in a panic. It's like, you can't hide those things, Cats. It's obvious that there's something it's subconsciously that's bothering you. You're losing sleep or something, because if that's the way you need to be. Now, I might get angry at someone in a debate. I might even abuse someone in a debate. But it's not because I've been kept awake at night. I'm not sailing off into the sunset. See you later. Best of luck, lads. We have the globe debunked, and then coming back a while later in a panic because I know it didn't happen.
We hold up a big mirror to their turmoil, their internal mental turmoil in regards to this subject. All we are is just a reflection of that, and they hate it. They don't want to see it. They want to destroy it. Now, do we care? Am I looking at them thinking, you're a reflection of the evil society? They're not. They're not normies. Nobody behaves like they do. Their vindictive, vicious bullying isn't something that is generally accepted in society at any level. It is here. It's perfectly acceptable for you to bully a flat earther on YouTube or in general society. Perfectly acceptable for some reason. Oh, well, not a protected group. All right, bully them away. Yeah, go ahead. No worries.
How's the airplane video coming?
Did you want to do that?
Ted. This is 1 second. Leave us finish. This is a good topic. Give us a second, right? Right. What if you? I have to lose me to train of thought now. If you are a lawyer, then you presume everyone else is a lawyer, right? So if you're thinking that way, you presume, well, I'm a lawyer, so the rest of them are all lawyers, and that kind of makes it okay in your head to be a lawyer, right? In some ways, but if they came out and admitted, like if Conspiracy Cats came out and said, look, I can't prove it's a globe anymore, you've got a point, right? He's under the impression that we would absolutely humiliate him and laugh at him for 100 years. I wouldn't do that at all. I go, yeah, welcome to the club. We don't know. We don't know what we thought we knew.
I wouldn't even do that. I wouldn't even welcome
his compadres.
Let me just agree with Brian. I wouldn't even welcome him to the club because I wouldn't care. All right, you're a flat earther now. All right, I couldn't care less. I care as much about you being a flat earther as about you being a globe believer in opposition to me. In my general day-to-day thoughts, I don't give you any thought. What's that? You're a flat earther now? Yeah, I still don't care.
Yeah, but they would attack if one of us came out and said, like, the problem is they think that we would behave on, I'm going to use the term, en masse, like they would behave, which is to abuse us and ridicule us. Whereas I don't think in general we would behave that way. You know, flat earthers in general just go, yeah, we've been trying to tell you, and that'd be the end of that.
I don't think so. I don't think they actually think that. I think they're more afraid of the wrath of their compadres. I mean, look
Wrong.
at
We've
these
got
guys.
John.
Look
He's
at what
told
they've
us.
been
We know
doing to us.
That's
They'll
right,
be
Alvin. We
doing
know
it to them
firsthand.
too.
We've got John. He's told us. He's here partly because of a guilty conscience for that exact reason. So no, we know that's not the case. We've been told firsthand by John.
Stereotype fallacy. Anyway, I said planes. Brian said trains. All we're missing is automobiles. Can we get on with it?
I don't know. Everyone's having a good laugh, talking, but we'll cover a bit of Dave.
Hey everyone,
Just one
so
last
with
thing.
the first two videos in this mini-series...
Go ahead, one deck. I'm sorry, 10th, one deck.
Sorry, it's only. I'm just saying, anti-flat earthers are actually flat earthers, but they're just too scared to admit it.
Yes.
That's what they are.
Yes, that's correct. That's why flat earther is in their name. Anti-flat earther includes flat earther in the title for a reason. Correct.
I demonstrated that anyone can prove to themselves conclusively that the Earth is a sphere by...
Did we get that? Did anybody pick up on that? This is part 3. We listened to all the other parts, Dave. No, you didn't. You didn't provide that at all. What you did was show false dichotomies with straw men models, and you didn't actually present a globe at all. What you did present, after telling us we weren't allowed to critique it, was CGI, including the back half of the moon, and then justified why you couldn't see it. So you haven't done that. You're just lying.
by looking at objects in the sky and...
Looking at objects in the sky. But that's not what you did. You showed the back half of the moon in a CGI rendering, and then you strawmanned us with a azimuthal equidistant north-centric projection of a globe model that came from the celestial sphere model and elevation angle measurements taken from a flat plane. So we covered all of your assertions in regards to the objects in the sky and your presuppositional orbital motions that they held. But we covered all of this. This didn't prove anything, Dave. Wow. Did the scriptwriter tell you that you proved it?
thinking with their brains. Those objects were the moon and the stars. So for this one, let's get even simpler and talk about man-made objects in the sky.
The moon and the stars, Dave told you that they go in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere that he begged the question of. Hello, you complete idiot! They all move in the same direction. You told an audience they went in opposite directions. That's because you are stupid. So what, you think you did a really good job of proving stuff with the stars? You told literally an audience they went in opposite directions in the south hemisphere. Hello? You're thick. You have no idea what the stars do. You've never observed them.
He's at present claiming, before he gets on to his actual topic of this video, he's claiming elevation angles. They can't work on a curved surface. And they are mere measurement of perspective. So he's claiming something as a proof that is a debunking of what he's trying to prove. And the measurement is a perspective measurement, not a measurement of our curve. So he has nothing before he even moves onto the point of the video.
Continuing with the theme of requiring precisely zero science to show that Flat Earth is the dumbest hoax on the entire internet, one thing that anyone can do to prove that the Earth is a sphere is to...
Okay. So, without science, we'll cover this again just so it's summarised. It's a concrete noun. So you're saying disproving or proving the flat Earth? That's a concrete noun. With science or without science. That's a method that deals with cause and effect relationships. You're an idiot.
To look at commercial airline flights. Let's revisit the Flat Earth map, or...
This isn't a flat Earth map. This is the azimuthal, equidistant, north-centric globe projection. The lines on it were acquired by flat Earth elevation angle measurements, as were all of the models. That's how they're made. It's also a globe projection. So you're now holding up a globe projection and telling us this is our flat Earth model. I've never claimed this is my model. Further to that, models are pseudoscience. We don't live on a model, it's a reification fallacy to assert it, even if you're holding it up as a straw man false dichotomy, as Dave has been doing for the last 3 videos. This is not my model, it's an azimuthal equidistant globe projection. So you're saying that this is a failure of a globe projection? Why does it need to be projected flat anyway? Can we see the globe version of it, please? Why are we using the azimuthal equidistant flat projection when it's a globe projection? Do we get to see the globe version of it? Is that why it fails? Maybe you don't know anything about anything when it comes to these maps and models.
Or the thing they pretend isn't their map, but it totally...
So we pretend it isn't our map. It's an azimuthal equidistant north-centric globe projection. That's what it is. You're saying the globe projection makes it my map, does it? Why would I have a map as a flat earther that's got the name globe projection in it? It's an azimuthal equidistant north-centric globe projection with use of lines that can only be measured and only operate on a flat surface. The Earth itself, that's where they've come from. Come on, Brian.
We're finished. The latitude and longitude grid that is shown on the AE or the distance map, that is flat Earth. The position of all the continents and countries, especially south of the equator, that is based on a globe. That's why they're stretched. So they've just manipulated the latitude and longitude positions to suit the globe, south of the equator. That's all they did. But the latitude and longitude grid is back engineered, is based on flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. That's the only way you could get that. And because Polaris is at your horizon, is at 0 degrees when you're at the equator, then everything past the equator they just made up. You know, instead of sticking with what was actually happening, which is the lines of longitude diverging out from a center point, they brought the lines of longitude back into another center point, antipodal to the one they created.
It's because they can't make a map, so they just use this.
So we can't make a map. All of them were made using flat Earth elevation angle measurements. The equatorial plane was derived from a circle of equal elevation measurement to Polaris. That's what your equator is. And if it's used in mapping, you'll be using that equatorial plane with a globe burger slapped around it and you sanding in the middle at a molten iron core point. So when you say we haven't made one, they all came from flat Earth elevation angle measurements without exception. Maybe when you tell us that we can't make a map, you should bear in mind that your globe projections started life as the equatorial plane and the angle measurements to Polaris to give you these lines on all maps. They wouldn't be useful for measuring circles of equal elevation to find your way home if you get lost, if they were curving, because they wouldn't work with angles anymore. And that's how navigation's done. So if you're now to use this map, it is still very useful. But you're saying it's a flat Earth map because we don't know how to make one. We're not cartographers. I've never claimed to be one. Why would you be holding up some stereotyping fallacy like all flat earthers suddenly instantly need to be cartographers? We're not. But we do know as flat earthers, us specifically, that the maps and models were all derived from elevation angle measurements to the lights in the sky off a flat plane. So how are you going to square that circle, Dumbo?
Embarrassingly for them, this is actually
Nathan. Every OS map, which is the most accurate maps in the world, which is the ones used by GPS, they're all 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional Cartesian coordinates maps, XYZ, XY and XYZ. They're all flat Earth maps, all created by the best cartographers we have.
Azimuthal equidistant projection of the globe.
Oh, so you do know it's a projection of the globe then? So you're going to tell us how this globe projection fails? So the globe projection fails and you're going to tell us how? I see. Maybe you could use a different one. I mean, they've all come from the same place. What about the lines on it? They've come from flat Earth and the angles that you'll use if you're mapping or navigating anything ever. That's how it's done.
That's right. The flat Earth map is
not a flat Earth map. It's an azimuthal equidistant globe projection. Why have you now relabeled it a flat Earth map when you've just labelled it accurately as the azimuthal equidistant globe projection?
Is a map of the globe, taken from the perspective of looking down at the North Pole. And
so, in your last 2 videos when you held this up in strawman false dichotomy, you're now telling us that it's actually a failed globe projection? So why did you hold it up as a flat Earth map? When you know that you're lying and strawmanning us with a globe projection. That's because that's what Dave does. He sets up a false dichotomy because that's what's in the script.
And flattening out its surface into a plane so that a three-dimensional surface can be shown in 2 dimensions. That's
right, and where did you get the lines from both of these models? Now we've got an actual globe cartoon. Where did these lines come from? What's this line here at the centre point? What's that called? Is it called the equator? How'd you measure that? Is it with flat Earth elevation angle measurements to Polaris? What about if you start navigating? Will you be standing on this surface? Or will you be at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth at the equatorial plane so that it can work with angles, Dave? You don't seem to know very much about maps and models. You just know that this is a failed globe projection, even though you've held it up in false dichotomy strawman as a flat Earth map for the last 2 videos.
That's why everything is distorted with no consistent scale.
Because it's a globe projection. So because it's a globe projection, that's why it's all distorted. It's amazing that Brian knew that before we even played your video.
Secretly, flat Earth priests know what this is, and they know...
Secretly? What, no, it's a failed globe projection when you hold it up in false dichotomy strawman? It's not a secret. We know it and we humiliate you with it. What, you're going to reverse that like somehow we're holding a secret that we know it's a globe projection? Yeah, where do you think the lines came from? You haven't covered that bit. So you take it one step back to it being a globe projection, so you can say, oh, they're both really globes. This globe's a globe and this flat Earth's a globe. No, mate. Both of them came from flat Earth elevation angle measurements.
No, it doesn't work, but they're dumb and lazy and can't come up with anything better, so...
Sorry, you can't come up with anything better. They're your globe projections that have failed.
They stick with this and simply deflect anytime these facts are brought up.
The deflection of the fact that it's a globe projection? That's your argument? You're saying we'd have to deflect against that? No, we'd point out that it's a failed globe projection and how the distortions you've just described in your failed globe projection have distorted it when you project it from the globe. And furthermore, the globe model that you held up would have also come from flat Earth elevation angle measurements. And maybe you could show us the origins of your globe to contest what I've just said, Dave. Maybe you could do that. This is gravy, by the way, if you're watching.
Nathan.
This is actual gravy.
Nathan.
Yes.
Nathan, he said that he proved exclusively. Now he says the priests are dumb and lazy, show anything that's proof. Rejecting who he is. Everything he says about him, and you know where from.
Well, I'm glad you were so concise about it, 10th.
He's been having bad reception lately.
Yeah, he is. He has. Right, I'm going to do one last plug to Neil's GoFundMe campaign. So check it out. I will stick a link right now in the live stream chat. So go and check out. Oh, come back. Share. There we go. If indeed you can't afford to contribute to Neil's GoFundMe campaign, then just go onto the GoFundMe campaign right now, if you're in the live audience, and just share it. Just smash the share button and say, a friend needs some help. And hopefully someone else who sees your post will go out and contribute to him in the meantime. In the meantime, from the people who have contributed, so a quick shout out to Fiber Oats and Paul Cam. Paul Cam, that's... maybe I shouldn't say. So thank you very much to those of you who have supported the GoFundMe campaign for Neil. Hopefully he'll get towards his target sometime soon. But with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's live show possible. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
What do you mean? You said your name in English, doesn't he always?
Well, everybody just calls
No,
me Arwen.
Arwen's not his real name.
No, Arwen is actually my real name. It's my middle name. It's the name that goes in between there, right? But I never use the rest of my name, so it's kind
I
of weird to
don't
hear
know
that.
it. I missed it. What is it?
Let's not worry about that. Now we're recording.
Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah, good luck, man. I mean, I really hope you make it. It would be great. I mean, I wanted you actually to get out of New York for a while now because that place is in big trouble. So
Yeah, New York is gonna fall.
yeah.
Is my sound back?
Yeah, much better.
Yep.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, it's funny. Right at the hour mark where you transition to the after show, the internet every day just goes bad at that same time. It's amazing how many times it does that consistently. Anyway, my remark was Dave said conclusively he's proven everything. But he never showed any proof when he said he conclusively proved everything. And then he ends up calling us flat earth priests and dumb and lazy to get the evidence together, which is really a projection of who he is and what he hasn't done. I mean, it's amazing. This guy is so easy to read.
Remember when the live show was going all distorted, Arwen? And it was all like stuttering and you'd point it out at the beginning. I found out why that was happening last night.
Oh?
Yeah, just
When was
heat.
it?
Just pure heat. So when I first had the computer, it was getting so hot that it was cooking the iGPU. And that was all that it was. Just excess heat was causing
Oops.
the thermal runaway, they call it, I think. Where it gets hot and then it needs more power to sustain the same frequency. So that makes it more hot. So it needs more power. And so it continues. And then eventually it just shits the bed. And that was what was happening. So I watched it yesterday. I was testing. And as I was watching it, I was like, ooh, the usage on that is creeping up. And I just sat there and watched it. And then eventually it hit 99%. And then the stream I was testing with said, your encoder is overloaded. I'm like, so it's not doing anything more than it was, but simply because the inside of the PC is so blisteringly hot, it's cooked it. It's cooked the iGPU. That was what was happening.
And well, lucky it doesn't get fried. If it would pull any further, eventually it's gonna like short circuit.
It wouldn't. It would shut down. It would eventually just shut the chip off. Eventually, it does have protection for it. But in the meantime, it overloads it, and that was the end of the show. I had to either cut the recording or cut the live stream or restart or do something to get rid of the heat, which I didn't know was the problem at the time. It's just like, why is it crapping out? Because it was always overheating. Anyway.
Shall we continue with the airplane? Because he hasn't said anything about the airplanes yet.
Yeah, I was waiting for him. He was saying something next, and then we ended the show. I want to hear that.
From the center you go, the more significant the distortion. So problems really arise in the southern hemisphere. That's where the
Could you
flights.
pause a second, Nathan? Sorry about this. I tried to get to it before you play it. What he's trying to do is grease the skids for great circle routes. That's what he's doing, just so everyone knows. He's trying to grease the skids for great circle routes. What are great circle routes? They're all basically longitudinal routes because they have to make a full circle of the globe.
Right.
So all longitudinal routes.
And he's even got it highlighted. You can't see it. I just want to tell Brian what's on screen. So the way this map works is from the center out. It's working on the longitude lines. That's how it's accurate. And what he's got is he's got a picture of the what he calls the begging the question hemisphere as an outside edged ring donut in the bottom half of the azimuthal equidistant projection as it is. Now, obviously, that's not including the lines coming from inside to out. He's cut half of them out. So it's no longer functioning in the way the map can actually function, even at the southern hemisphere, with the stretched and distorted land. It does still work on those lines. Well, he's just cut them off by putting it in a big donut and saying it doesn't work with the southern hemisphere. It's like, well, you've just explained how the globe projection distorts the map, but now you're going to flip it back onto it being a flat Earth map that doesn't work because you're going to abuse the way that this map is designed. It's like, man, once you pick it apart. I don't doubt that Dave understands how he's doing this because he's just reading off his researcher's script. But once you pick apart this little magic trick, it is pretty sad, especially when you've got the disclaimer that it's a global projection before he starts pulling apart the straw man. It's pretty disgusting, really, when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, see, what he's going to do is he's going to start talking about great circle routes. And he's going to talk about how the plane follows this longitude line or this same route straight around the globe. And it'll have to make one full loop of the globe, taking the globe's radius in fully. So it can't be like, it won't be like a circle of the tropics or something like that. It will have to be like the equator. It'll have to make that size of a circle. But the problem is, within their claim, the equator, and they never speak about this, the equator is also a great circle route. They have to claim that that's also a great circle route. But yet, no airplanes or ships follow the equator. You know why? Because they don't. Great circle routes are straight. I'm feeding back on someone there. Great circle routes are straight line routes. Planes don't fly in circles. Ships don't go around circles. They don't follow circles around. So they don't do that. A plane going from one point on the equator to another will be like a chord line. Will be a chord line of that circle. That's all it will be. Same with a ship.
Right, which won't work on this map. Just at the point at the
end.
Which won't work on this map. The whole point being the lines from the centre out will work and give you accurate distances. As soon as you start cutting across the map, it doesn't work that way, which is what it's about to do.
No, it works fine with it works fine with the latitude and longitude grid that's on the Gleason's map, but it doesn't work with the positions of the land. The point is that the planes are going to fly straight line, like great circle routes are just straight lines on a piece of paper. That's all they are. That's what they are. They're basically straight line routes, using north to south, south to north most of the time. Right? Maybe not as much all the time in the north because they don't have to. But if you're talking about long distance, long haul flights, you're going to be going from south to north and north back to south. If you want to go from south to south, from South Africa to South America, or even the famous Sydney to Santiago, that route is following great circle routes. So that's going north and then through north and then off to south. There's no like when they say great circle route, and then they're trying to show you a globe, they're trying to beg the question that these planes are actually adjusting for curvature, that they're not doing. They're not doing any of that. They're just following straight lines. So if you look at the latitude and longitude grid on the AE map or on the Gleason's map, go from one longitude line to another in any way you want, and it's just a straight line. You might be a dog leg. You might go north. It might go from south to north on one, and then go back on yourself, going north back to south on another one. Or you might make a right angle even. It depends on where you're, well, probably not, but it depends on where you're going. But the point is you're not going around in a circle.
Brian, let me try to give an image because I'm following you. On a piece of paper, as we've shown, they'll do a great circle route almost from an orthographic view, and it looks like an arc. But I've seen them do it from a top view, looking down, and it's just a straight line. There is no arc. That's what Brian is trying to say.
Yeah, that's what I spent 5 minutes
Here's South
to
America.
say. Yeah.
Here's Australia. Pretty far away, huh? If this map was taken to be precisely to scale, which it would be if the Earth was actually flat, then there is...
So this map that's a projection of a sphere would be how the world was if it was flat, would it, Dave? No, that's your straw man false dichotomy that you're holding up with the failed globe projection and its distortions after being projected from a sphere that was also derived from flat Earth elevation angle measurements to Polaris. So no, it's a total fail.
As far away as two
Didn't
places
he
can get.
Realise there is no spoon. Yeah, there is no great circle route. There's only a straight line distance between the 2 points. But if you're going to use a globe projection, the way in which you have to express that straight line is as a great circle route, because it's the only way to generate the great circle if you put the surface onto a ball. To generate
Let's say
straight
we
line via a
wanted
great
to fly
circle.
between Santiago and Sydney. If the Earth was flat, which way would we go? Well,
If the Earth was flat, no, on this failed globe projection map, which way will you assert that the model doesn't work? That's what you're saying.
straight line path would go up across all of South America, all of North America, over Alaska, and then continuing all the way until we get to Sydney. So, do any airlines actually fly between these cities? Yes, they do. This airline flies between Santiago and Sydney 4 times a week. But which way do they go? Do they follow this straight line? Nope, they do.
Okay, so now he's done what Adam's just described. He's put up the picture of the curving, aka Great Circle route that is claimed to be taken when you distort it backwards onto the globe model. It's like, but this isn't a curved path though. It looks curved on the globe, and they're not navigating using this. They are not taking this onto a plane, and they're not flying a curved path. But that's how it looks on a globe, you say? But it's a straight line. So this isn't representative of what they actually do. Nobody in their right mind would take a curved path like this. The shortest distance is a straight line. Didn't you know that? So this is wrong.
Do the whole thing over the Pacific.
What he's doing there, Nathan, just I can't even see the screen, but it won't matter because I know what he's doing. It's kind of multi-layered. What he's doing there is he's trying to claim that the flight that goes between Sydney and Santiago, or Santiago and Sydney, I don't know if it goes back the way, but it goes from Sydney to Santiago. He's trying to claim that they're not flying Great Circle routes. That's literally what he's claiming there. Because if it's not going to north and then to south, then it's not going the Great Circle route. So that the very thing that is their claim concerning airplanes, which is that if they fly Great Circle routes, that very thing he is now about to deny by claiming that the plane is not doing this and it's flying off in some other direction, which it isn't doing. That guy Max Eugen, I'm not a fan of the guy, but he did take that flight from Sydney, because he's an Australian, from Sydney to Santiago, and he showed on his compass that the directions that they were taking was north, or south to north, cross north, and then to south. You know what I mean? There is what Dave is claiming is not the official. If you ask an airline what route they're taking, they are following a Great Circle route. They're not going across the Great Southern Ocean. They're not doing that. That isn't happening. So Dave is just going to make an assertion that they're flying across one of the Southern Oceans or some rubbish like that. It's like, well, why aren't they doing that all the time? Why waste all the fuel going all the way north? Why are you doing all this? You know, normally going north and then back down to south. Why are you doing that now? They're not. They're following what they claim to be Great Circle routes, which is just straight lines. How they're doing it, or whatever, I don't know how they're doing it, but they're doing it. You know, I did see how they're using winds and stuff like that, but who cares? They're doing it, and they're not flying across the Southern Oceans, because they don't do that. Airliners want to keep close to land.
Okay, let's just summarise what I said in the live show, right? As it was juicy. Why is it that we're being asked? We're not there to be asked, but he's holding up our answer in false dichotomy as a little straw man that he's trying to burn. Why? Well, because he's got a positive assertion about how the world maps out on a sphere shape that nobody's using. Nobody's using spheres on boats, planes, or any other means. Ordnance survey maps if you're out hiking, right? So you as a general normie will know what a map is. So why has he got to actually do this? Well, he's got to justify how his sphere that we're not using works. So he's going to try and put it on you to explain how things work on a flat map. And he'll ascribe you the flat map that you're going to be using and say that that is how the world doesn't work when the map fails. But you don't have to justify this. Have you claimed the azimuthal equidistant map as the world? If you have, no sympathy for you, you're a buffoon. But if you haven't, why would you? Are you a cartographer? Have you got a particular interest in mapping the world? Had you before Flat Earth? Oh, but now you've got to be held to task on your version of how the world should work with flights. Well, why? Are you in flights? Are you an airline pilot? Are you providing airline pilots with maps? So no, there's no explanation needed from you whatsoever. Oh, but they have a positive assertion that they need to defend. So over to you to be put on the back foot to be defending it. Now, by chance, we do. We've gone through this process to be able to give you this advice as a member of the audience by doing all of the pitfalls. Now, I'm not saying that Brian's wasted his time when he's done all this research. Quite the contrary. It means that we can take it apart so that you know we have validity when we say, you don't have to do this. Yeah, listen to how we pull it apart in great detail. Yes, it's exceptionally good in terms of the way Brian does it. But you don't need this. You need to recognise that the burden's been flipped. And if it's been flipped with a false dichotomy and a straw man model that you are even claiming, then there's 3 fallacies in one that you've got to get through before, rather than actually trying to explain how a map works when you're not a cartographer. So that's just the point I wanted to drop in. I'm not trying to demean what Brian's done. Quite the contrary. We can only make that positive claim so strongly because we know how to also undo it as well.
ocean. Here's how that trip looks on a globe. It takes 14 hours and 15 minutes going west, and
This is like I haven't even watched this video, but I said it before it even came. There's the positive assertion that he needs to be defending, right? That's why this has all just happened. That whole preamble was so that he could drop this positive assertion in. How this straight line looks bent on a globe nobody's using to navigate.
and 12 hours and 25 minutes going east. On a flat Earth, that route would look like
On a flat Earth? What? You mean your failed globe projection with its distortions that you've just explained? The globe distortions. So after you take a globe that we're not standing on and not using to navigate, it gets projected into this, and you say that's the flat world? No. No, definitely not. I'll keep saying it every time it comes up, Dave, because it's crap. Now, it might have worked on people in 2015, but it doesn't work now.
this, an absurdly long and totally unnecessary arc.
On an azimuthal equidistant projection that's designed to work from the centre out.
For comparison, how long does it take to fly between New York City and London?
Why are you now showing us what happens on an azimuthal equidistant projection? This is a reification fallacy. This isn't a flight from New York City to London or vice versa. This is what you're drawing on an azimuthal equidistant globe projection with its failed distortions and inaccuracies after being projected from a globe that required the longitude and latitude lines to be put on it so that it could work with flat maps and elevation angle measurements off a flat baseline. That's a flat Earth.
It's about 7 hours going east and about 8 hours going west. Now, you tell me, does it make sense that a plane would travel this enormous arc in less than twice the time that it would take to travel?
Yeah. 1 second. He just pointed out that the plane will be going from London to New York. It'll be about 7 hours going east and 8 hours going west. That's what he said. Right? That alone completely debunks. Now, I don't know whether those figures are correct or not, but he's after just claiming that alone straight away debunks the rotation claim of the globe. So what he's trying to do, he's just debunked rotation right there. Because it can't.
Right, what you're saying is it would be the other way around if there was Coriolis deflection, because it would have the shortened flight time going west.
No, it'd be completely different. I mean, the differential between the two would be hugely different. I mean, the plane flying from east to west, I don't even know if it would even get east to west would get there very fast. Plane flying from west to east, I don't even know if it would. Well, it probably would get there, but the differential would be bigger than that, way bigger than that.
Right.
It's like North Carolina to Los Angeles. It's like it's the same thing. You just you have to. There's no way around it. You're going to have a bigger differential than that.
It's not just bigger in that instance. It's you never reach your destination. So in one direction, if you're going to California, then your flight time's reduced from something like 4.5 hours to an hour and a half. But in the opposite direction, you'd never reach it traveling forwards. The delta's bigger than the speed of the plane.
Correct. Because it's 860 miles an hour at the latitude of California and Charlotte. And if the plane's going 500 or even 600 miles an hour and the Earth's turning below you at 860, how do you ever get there?
You don't. In the heliocentric model with Earth turn claimed to be being proven by Coriolis deflection, that's 15 degrees an hour turn of the Earth underneath objects in an inertial reference frame, including but not limited to helicopters, bullets, aeroplanes, footballs, gyroscopes, pendulums, all of which are claimed to be demonstrating that there is a second reference frame turning beneath an inertial reference frame to cause a 15 degrees an hour, not actual deflection. That would be Earth turning underneath the aeroplane, and it would never reach its destination if it was travelling east in that circumstance.
Correct. Up around New York and London, there would be a less of a rotational rate because you're more north. But the point is that I don't even know if that what he said is even just a pure lie, because I wouldn't trust that, and he'd say. So he could have just added in an hour there that wasn't part, that might be the other way around, or that is not actually part of the flight. But he might have chosen that exact flight because this is correct, where there is that extra hour when flying west, right? That flight might have that extra hour flying west, but what he's doing there is trying to convince the audience that he has an argument because he's choosing that exact flight. But what about Los Angeles to London? Los Angeles to London, or sorry, Los Angeles to New York, and New York to Los Angeles. Los Angeles to New York is faster than New York to Los Angeles, whereas it should be the other way around if we were on a rotating globe.
I've
Do you know
done
what I mean?
that flight. I've done that flight, LA to New York, many times, and we got to New York faster because we caught the jet stream going west to east. Then on the way back, it took over 6 hours, an hour and a half longer, to get back to LA because we were hitting the jet stream and had headwinds.
Yeah, but
He's going to need R anyway.
Cherry
He's
picking.
going to need R
Yeah.
for any big circle.
Yeah, he is. But I mean, what he's doing is he's cherry picking a particular flight. Now, he's bringing up the Sydney Santiago flight, and he's referencing it to a globe map, and then but he has even shown the route that he's claiming that it takes. You know what I mean? Because the route he'd be claiming, if he's not showing what I'm going to show in a minute, then it's not going to be a great circle route. So if he's claiming that it's doing something else, then it won't be taking a great circle route, which means it's not flying in accordance with airlines.
That. Planes don't fly great circle routes. They fly approximate great circle routes across a flat plane. They can't fly great circle routes. They don't fly the great circle route from like New Zealand to South Africa. They don't fly the great, which would be going over the South Pole. They fly a convoluted route. They don't. Yeah, this mass claim is false. What that he's making.
Teeny tiny.
Yeah, that's correct.
Not even a little bit. First of all, the fact that these are arcs at all is totally nonsensical. Planes don't constantly turn slightly left or right. They lock into a flight path and go straight.
Yeah, but that's what on this model, on this map that you've said is the world, because you've decided that that's what the flat Earth world is. This map. Ugh.
Yeah, that's the only arc, isn't it? It's the only arc, is the arc that you've just imagineered. Because it's not an arc that the plane flies. The plane does not arc. It flies in straight level flight, but it does not do what he's just painting it on to do. And like I said, more importantly, don't fly those routes. That's a false claim that he's moving forward from.
But he's just
Flat earthers like to whine about how planes don't constantly dip down to.
Sorry. He's just debunked himself again, and now he's about to get into trying to avoid the maths that disproves all his claims. He just said they lock into a straight path, right? So they lock into a straight path. Great. Well, how does that fit with your rotation then? That would mean that they'd have to leave London to get to Ghana. They'd have to head off east.
Well, let me just show you that. Stop a sec. So 10th Man's just posted this, and I'll just put it up on screen because it contrasts the picture he had on earlier with a curved path. So this is presumably from Google Earth, right, 10th? Shows it straight.
I've got two pictures and then the whole article for the first picture. But they've just debunked everything. He just said they fly straight paths. It's over. I mean, it's nonsense. So Brian got it. Adam got it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can show up my own video that, yeah, they could fly a straight path, but if they were going from London to Ghana and they had locked into a straight path, then instead of the distance being just over 3,000 miles from London to Accra, Ghana, the distance is going to be over 6,000 miles from London to Accra, Ghana, because of where Accra, Ghana is going to be 6.5 hours after the plane leaves London, which is the average time it takes for the plane to fly from London to Accra, Ghana.
Do you know what I mean? I've got this up.
Hang on. I want Adam to summarize what he last said, because that was perfect. That they just make it up, but they're all flying straight paths. Remember, if he's still here.
Yeah, you just did.
No, I know, but I want you to say it, because that when you look at the pictures I posted and what Brian has researched and shown and done videos on, they're all straight paths, but they have to assume they're on the globe. So they say great circle because they have to assume R is below them and they're flying over a globe, but they never do it in reality.
No, when they paint this on to the ball and show you the supposed path on a ball, if you were to match the vectors that the plane takes, they're not commensurate and wouldn't work on that supposed journey that fits on the ball. The path vectors of the plane is not commensurate with that journey.
Exactly.
Yeah, perfect
If you can
timing. I
see-
had a 10th diagram up while you were describing that with the rum line.
Yeah, now rum
But-
line is a straight path that they have. We're having the same angles across all meridians of longitude. That's how they describe that. But again, you have to assume you're on the globe. You have to say, okay, if I'm on a globe, then I'm really taking the shorter curve path. But you never. This is all. Okay, but this is the magic that they use.
No,
You're not on the ball.
No, you see that arc that is making over the rum line. See that arc that is being made over the rum line. See the arc that's been made over the rum line. You know the way the rum line is a straight line, and there's an arc over that showing that is the actual route, but it's not an arc. It's actually a straight line. If you straighten out that line, that will be the actual route. So they put in a straight line, which is the rum line. This is where the Habermas formula comes in, and they then show what the route would really be, right? Which is, and they make it an arc because they're pre-assuming a globe. But ignore the rum line because that's all based on the universal transverse Mercator. As I said, they take things like circles of equal altitude and celestial navigation that are actually measured, then they distort them on the universal transverse Mercator, then they undistort them and put them onto a globe. This is what they try and do mathematically. It doesn't work, but it doesn't matter. The point is that rum line isn't the route, right? The route is actually that curved path, but in reality, you straighten out that curved path because it's longitudinal, mostly longitudinal. So what happens is that if you straighten out that curved line, that arc, that is the route, but it's a straight line, not an arc. And he's about to try and grease the skids now by trying to say that flat earthers say that airplanes should dip their nose below horizontal. Yeah, we don't say it. They are the facts. Sorry, go on.
Since
Well,
they
Google
maintain
map-
constant altitude, and altitude conforms to the curvature of the Earth. So how do
Begging the
flat
question.
earthers deal with this
Pause.
information?
Straight away, he bugged the question there. Straight away. Altitude has nothing to do with the Earth. The point I'm making is you can claim that you're holding a constant altitude over a globe, but it wouldn't make any difference over a flat plane. You'd still be holding a constant altitude. So that's not an argument. That's a hijacking of something that happens in reality, which is the holding of a constant altitude based on air pressure. Right? That's all that is. Doesn't prove a globe. It doesn't disprove a flat plane. It's not a proof or a disproof of anything. It's just a fact of what they do.
Well, for the longest time, they simply denied that these Southern Hemisphere flights exist at all.
Begging the
We
question.
didn't deny him. Sorry.
No, it's just begging the question of hemispheres again.
Yeah, we didn't deny any of it. Nobody denied that there was. Nobody denied they were flying from southern locations. But what we do deny is that they're flying around the globe and they're flying around the oceans. They're not doing that. They're not flying arcs. They're not flying around the globe. The Great Southern Oceans are so big that they don't. The Great Southern Oceans are very big and they don't fly straight across them. Because if they did, they'd be doing them all the time. They would never go from south to north and north back to south. They would never do that. They would just always be flying across. Just like they don't even fly across the northern oceans. If you look at a route from London to Los Angeles, they don't fly in a direct line across the North Atlantic. They don't do that. They go up towards Greenland, down across Canada, down across the US, across Utah, Nevada, and then into Southern California. They don't fly in a straight line. If you look at a Gleason's map or a globe, they don't fly in a straight line from London to Los Angeles. They don't
They never,
in that
they
direction.
never fly over the North Pole, and they absolutely don't even touch the South Pole. So they they do. A lot of flights do go like through northern routes for some reason, but as to why they do that, we don't actually know. We can only speculate whether it's like the wind streams or that it is actually this straight line. That it's all we don't really know for sure.
Well, we know. I know.
They
I
don't
know for
fly
sure.
directly over the North Pole, and they never even touch the South Pole.
And neither do the
But I
pilots.
know-
Just let me just add that into Armin's point, which he's correct about. They don't know if you're a pilot either. You give them waypoints, you give them charts, and you're told which direction you're supposed to follow. That's it. You've got basically like highways in the sky, and they follow the routes. So why the whys and the whys and wherefores of the waypoints, a bit of a tongue twister, isn't of concern to them. Do they set them and then move towards them and arrive at their destination safely? Yes. Do they know why
Exactly.
they move in that direction? No.
Yeah, the pilots don't know how this route system was established. I wonder if anybody in that system even knows who made that and why. They just follow the system as it was built. It seems to work, and everybody just sticks to the system.
The flights are a nail in the coffin for flat Earth, so they would just lie and say there aren't any.
What?
No, that didn't happen. That's a lot of rubbish.
No,
Nobody
no.
ever said it. Well, we would say there's no southern hemisphere flights because flights can't fly southern hemispheres because southern hemispheres don't exist. It's a lot of rubbish. What this is, Nathan, what's going on here with Professor Dave, because I already saw his video some time back. What's going on with him is that this is a leapfrog. This is what they do. So he's going to try to leapfrog directly over the accumulation of pitch, the maths that would prove or disprove whether a plane is flying over a globe or a flat plane. He's going to try and leapfrog over the pitch, over the pitch argument, and just try and assert a load of rubbish that he's saying flat earthers deny. Yeah, flat earthers do deny that they're flying around southern hemispheres because they're not doing it. It's not that we are just denying it. They're just not doing that. We don't have a southern or northern hemisphere, and planes aren't flying them. It's a load of rubbish. So yes, we do deny that because it's real. They are not doing it. And what he's trying to do is leapfrog over the pitch argument, which is the absolute end. Just for the audience, I cannot get the pitch data of even one, never mind 10. I'm looking for 10 long-haul flights. I can't get it for even one, even off of captains, even off of airline captains. They can't get it for me. Wolfie and other people are on their side. They're claiming that their commercial pilots who are flying supposedly over a globe will not get the pitch data because the pitch data proves or disproves the surface that the plane's flying over.
That's, Brian, why I recorded my own. Yeah. You can't.
Yeah.
So I set it up and I recorded it myself. And it's straight level flight. That plane's nose never tilts, never dips below zero, never really dips below 1. It's always tipped upwards, and therefore it never adjusts for the reorientation of the surface whilst it's in straight and level flight.
Exactly, Adam. And more to the point, they can't because of the lift effect. The lift effect requires the chord line, which is the leading edge of the wing. It requires for a plane to have 100% lift effect, including cambered wings. It requires the chord line of the wings to be above horizontal, right? So it has to be above zero, right? So that means that the nose is also above zero. But the pilot must control the nose of the plane when they're flying. So if they start flying faster, right, or they're flying into, let's say, a headwind or something like that, they've got to push the nose down because the thrust with the wind will cause lift. So it'll cause the nose of the plane to go up in the air, which will be what it goes up. It will go up if they don't control the nose. The nose will go up too far, and they'll go into what's known as a stall. So they must control the thrust and the nose of the plane, but never did they have the nose at horizontal or below. Even +1, they'd probably never really get to +1 degrees, because that's how the lift effect works. You can do it yourself, but putting your hand out the window of a car and keep it totally level, and then slightly tip up the front of your hand, the thumb side of your hand, and what you notice, your hand will lift straight up in the air, right? So you have to control that effect. That's what flight is about. But unless you tip your thumb side of your hand slightly up, your hand will not go up. So that's why they always, when they're flying fast, they must push the nose down. When they're flying so slow, they bring the nose up, i.e. coming into land. This is how they have to fly. the lift effect makes it impossible to fly over a globe. It can't. The lift effect can only work over a horizontal plane, because to fly horizontally, right, to fly in a horizontal fashion, you need to have the chord line of the wings and the nose above horizontal to even fly horizontally. So how can they, and anything that is below horizontal, regardless of what people come up with cambered wings or any other nonsense, anything below horizontal is officially, right, officially a descent. And they need an accumulation of pitch that starts off at cruising altitude. When they get to cruising altitude, they need, what the plane would have to do on a globe is once it gets to cruising altitude, at that point, it would be horizontal for literally a second, and after that, it has to have a second by second accumulation of below horizontal pitch, which would mean when the plane is flying from London to Los Angeles, they would have to be pitched down below horizontal 87 degrees from the starting point when they left London, if they were to go from London to Los Angeles. So they'd have to be 87 degrees below starting horizontal if we were living on a globe. They don't do that. Planes fly with their noses and the chord line of the wings above horizontal. Anything Dave says is a load of rubbish. He has nothing to back up that claim, and he never will have anything, because it doesn't happen. Rant over.
But since anyone can find out that they definitely do exist in about 10 seconds of Googling, some of them have had to start coughing up explanations. The most popular of these is to pretend that the wind is responsible. Again,
asking why it's responsible when you've got a positive claim and we're not making an assertion about why this map would work in the way it does. You're holding it up as a false dichotomy, straw man, model that we don't claim, and then saying how the globe projection fails. I'll point it out every time it happens.
And he's projecting psychologically too with that. I mean, this is so preemptive what they're doing.
Yeah, and he's denying the reality, because reality is that they do, and they are using certain jet streams. And they admittedly say it. They're using jet streams more and more and more to get to places faster. This is something they do. They've been doing it for a good while. And then now they, with the advent of extra technology in planes, and they're more knowledgeable about the jet streams or whatever, I don't know. But they're admitting it. They're admitting that they're using the jet streams to get from A to B faster. They're doing this. This is not something that flat earthers are making up. This is something they do, and admittedly do it.
On screen, Brian, I've got, I just want to challenge you on his whole claim, Talk about great circle routes. This is an aeroplane route. And maybe these straight lines here are great circle routes that we see here, but I see none that utilize a great circle route in the southern hemisphere. None of it utilizes the shortest route. They all use as if the land is laid out on a flat plane with a central point. If you look at it, there's not one route that goes off the map and reappears on the other side, which would be a great circle route and the shortest route if it was a ball. But none of these planes do that.
Exactly, Adam. It doesn't happen. None of these things happen. Absolutely. Well, when they say great circle routes, they're basically just talking about following longitudinal directions as much as possible. That's all they're talking about. But there is no. They're not flying in circles, and they're not following southern. They never fly south. The great circle routes are always going south to north, north back to south, whatever. They're never flying south. They're never flying around the equator. They're never flying, around the hemisphere. That doesn't happen. As your map shows here, it shows what they're doing. These are not commensurate with a globe. They can't be. They couldn't be. They could only work over a horizontal plane.
And this is because flat earthers are lazy. Small differences in flight times going east versus west occur because planes fly with or against wind currents. So they just take this concept.
Why does he do this? It's just as they say, it's because of wind. What idiots, flat earthers are lazy. It's because of wind. Am I missing something here?
Well, he's avoiding Earth rotation.
Yeah, he just debunked himself. He keeps on debunking and not bringing up the rotation of the Earth that doesn't happen. Keeps debunking that.
There's so many ways. Brian, they're so easy to take down. Okay, fine. You would have a great circle route in your mind the way you see it, but you also must have Earth rotation to go with those great circle routes in your mind the way you see it, because you see it as a globe, as a sphere with a radius of 3959. But since airplanes prove the Earth is not rotating under you, or else the flights would be faster east to west every single time, because you got the aid of the Earth coming at you when flying in that direction, then you just disprove great circle routes, which are just straight lines anyway. I mean, this is over.
Well, they can't work on the globe anyway, simply because the globe has to stretch the distance between the longitude lines close to their equator. So if you are using the latitude and longitude grid correctly and using the distances between the latitude circles of latitude on a longitude line, then they have to always be equal. Which would make, what would happen then is that on a globe, because they are claiming an oblate spheroid, it doesn't matter if it's only 14 or 16 extra miles they're claiming, right? It doesn't matter what their claim is. The point is that it has an accumulation. What happens is over time from north to south along the longitude lines, the distance between the latitudes will vary. If you want to keep it equal, what will happen is the equator point on the latitude and longitude grid will not match their equator on their globe. And what will happen is be like a jumper that's too small for you. It won't go down to your waist because it won't meet at their south pole point then. It's completely convoluted. Their oblate spheroid claim mutates the latitude and longitude grid, making it impossible to use.
Yeah, sorry to jump in there at the end of the point, Brian, but I had thought about this the other day when Flat Earth Data was having an argument with someone, and I realized, wait a minute, you guys make this argument, this weird argument using the North Pole star and yada yada yada, and this is how you know your equator. Well, if there's a difference between nautical miles and regular miles, how could that be? Like, how does that equal the equator? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how did you get the equator? Did you do it using miles, or
well,
how does that work?
they get their equator distance around their circumference, is it? Eli, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the equator, basically. The equator itself.
Well, the equator is kind of based on the path of the sun. It's the halfway point between the tropics. But the distance around the equator, that comes from the back engineering of flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris, which they basically just take the average, the mean radius of a circle.
Well, but the result, is it nautical miles or is it regular miles?
It can be described both ways.
No, yeah, you can, but it's how you derive it. So you derive it in nautical miles because you're going to assume that this path of the sun is the equator line on a sphere, and you're going to assign it from stellar units, which will be nautical miles. Now, when you then come to the ground, you can then use that known distance in stellar units and convert into land miles and then express it, as you say, Brian, however you want. But for me, the initial calculation has to be done in nautical miles because you're using the sky to calculate it. Is that what you're asking?
Exactly. Well, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a video on this, Eli. There's a 40-minute video I made on this. How they're taking basically them, because what you have from one point on the latitude and longitude grid at its furthest south to the opposite side, you have 21,600 minutes of degree or nautical miles. But every circle has 21,600 minutes of degree. So if you take the radius if you make a circle out of that and come up with the radius, you come up with a 3,440 nautical mile radius. And then if you convert that into statute points, it comes out at 3,958 point with change. And they rounded it off up to 3,959. So they just back engineered it from flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. That's the only way they could come up with it. There is no measurement for any of this. It's a complete back engineering and hijacking of flat Earth measurements. That's what it is.
And bring it to an absurd conclusion. They will evoke currents of several hundred miles per hour, which would be a world record hurricane, and pretend that the plane is somehow traveling twice as fast as usual without anyone noticing. There are several problems here. First of all, this boost from the imaginary wind still isn't anywhere near enough. This arc is stupid long. The plane would have to be going several thousand miles per hour, and
if you reify the azimuthal equidistant north-centric globe projection and its failed distortions into the actual world that we're living in, by way of a strawman fallacy you hold up in false dichotomy. I'll say it every time.
And planes don't do that.
Second, Nathan, what did he say that we claim planes fly thousands of miles? Who's claimed that?
Hang on.
I don't know.
Yeah, he's claiming an arc as well. Arc? We don't claim arcs. And airline companies don't fly arcs. They fly straight lines. Like he's actually, the route he's coming up with is not a route taken by any airline company. Regardless of how they get into where they're getting, they're still using straight lines. They're not taking arcs around the hemisphere. That doesn't happen. So what he's coming up with there is a back engineering, another globe back engineering. That's all it is. On a globe, if I back engineer it, it would look like this. If I made it out to look like this, but that's not what it's happening in reality. Nobody is doing that in reality.
It goes both directions, east and west. How does the wind know which way the plane is going? Most days there are planes going opposite directions simultaneously. Does each of them have a little personal tornado like in Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, I think you're right when you said earlier about him trying to negate or deflect away from the fact that winds are asserted in globulus effect. So if he can distract away from the failure of a flat Earth model that's actually a globe projection, it negates him having to deal with it at all.
Flat Earthers have suggested things as stupid as personal domes, such that everyone gets their own set of stars.
Pretty sure someone will want to get their teeth into that.
The celestial dome is that's a navigation claim, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, that's due to perspective how you see and where you are, and then you move further south or north, depending where you are. You see more of things because you can see them before because there's a limitation to what you could see. So it's your personal view. Now he's calling it dome, but I want to see where he's going to go with this.
So sadly, this wouldn't even be the dumbest thing they've ever said. But as you can see, there's no way around this.
Yeah, thank you. What he's doing is he said flat earthers are claiming a personal, what he threw in, I think it was an atmospheric dome. No one's claiming an atmosphere on the UFOs. No, that's celestial navigation also speak about this dome, your personal dome of the heavens. It's based on perspective. That's all it's based on. And it's not a dome, technically, but they just say dome because they're using protractors. So that's what it is. So flat earthers aren't coming up with any crazy ideas, Dave. It's celestial navigation and astronomy. Thank you.
Flights exist. They are not traveling this insane distance because this is a projection of the globe without a consistent scale. The problem with the projection map they put...
So he's arguing against his own globe projection then? So he's even happy to drop it into the discussion that he's arguing against his own globe projection.
Push as reality is that as we...
They push as reality. You've just told us it's a globe projection. Are you having a laugh?
Go towards the South Pole on a globe, the latitude line...
When you go to the South Pole on a globe, what, when you assume antipodal hemispheric globe positioning that nobody uses in navigation? No, you can't do that. It won't work with elevation angle measurements, Dave. So at this point, we're holding you to task, holding you accountable, holding your head down the bog.
Lines are clearly getting shorter and shorter, but on this...
Clearly? Clearly getting shorter and shorter. What on your globe reification? Really?
Flat representation, they are being represented.
Flat representation? You mean the straw man model that's actually a globe projection? Both of which have got longitude and latitude lines that have come from elevation angle measurements that could only be measured if the Earth was flat. It's a total fail.
As longer and longer, so distances get more and more distorted.
The distortion that you said that it was incurring when it got projected from a globe, you mean? That's now the reason it fails as a flat Earth map. The very thing that you described and disclaimed as the distortion as a globe projection, that's the reason it fails. Now I'm going to say, as I did before you said this, that that's the reason it fails because it's a globe projection. Globe projection that fails because of its distorted globe nature when projecting it. Furthermore, the globe it was projected from has got lines on it that were measured on a flat plane. Just want to drop that in for the last time. Hopefully this is the end of his nonsense straw man burning.
The further outwards you go. That's why pretending this is a real map is stupid. And
what, like you are using it as a map? It is a real map. It is useful. It has got purpose. But you say using it as a map is useless or stupid? No, you just don't know what it's useful for, Dave, or how it was made.
And that's why flat Earth priests pretend the Southern Hemisphere doesn't exist.
Non sequitur conclusion. No, we don't say that this map failing when you point out the distortions of the globe projection is the reason the Southern Hemisphere doesn't exist. We don't say that. That's a complete nonsense. We say it's a begging the question fallacy to assert that when travelling south, you assume that when you arrive, you are antipodal from whence you began. That is stupid. We don't have a hemispherical assumption when travelling south. I don't assume that I am antipodal from my previous position. Just because you've used the word hemisphere for the south. It doesn't make it so. That's a begging the question fallacy. Unless you prove in somehow that you're moving along a sphere, that would incur drop. Again, Brian's already pointed out that you've completely sidestepped that.
It ruins everything for them.
No, it didn't. You just pointed out how a globe projection failed with its distortions. You literally ascribed to its globe projectionness.
As for their whining that flights don't travel over Antarctica, well, there's no reason for them to do that. The shortest
What? Who's moaning about it?
path, which we call a great circle for any common route, doesn't pass directly over Antarctica.
Why is it that in this depiction, like the one that we showed earlier, so let's go back to 10th's depiction, when we contradicted his depiction, just remember the time, 5:27, and then we'll go back to, if I can find the damn thing, somewhere around here-ish, when he shows it. There it is. Why has he got it shown like this, with a curved route? I get it. Describing how it would be curved across a global surface. It's just a cluster, isn't it? It's like a right mess, Dave.
The shortest path, which we call a great circle for any common route, doesn't pass directly over Antarctica.
Again, this is wrong. Let's go back to 10th man diagram. I love the fact that I've got it all lined up from my panel, who are exceptional, let's be honest. It's not down to me. But yeah, let's go back to the rum line description in this diagram. Right? Does this match with the distorted lines? Because according to this, you've got a straight line. But if you drew it on this version with your distortions to the flat earth acquired longitude lines, then you'd end up with a rum line that's bent for the actual journey to match it up on these curved grids. Now let's go back to his diagram. Has he got it drawn as a rum line to match up with the distortion of his globe that he's already disclaimed? Oh no, it's just a straight line. Is this a Mercator projection? Oh, absolutely not.
Some get pretty close, like Johannesburg to Melbourne. If it were to be flown, Johannesburg to Christchurch would nick the edge of Antarctica, but this isn't a regular flight. Why? Because the latter isn't a...
Yeah, good.
Pause it a second. No flight do any of that. There's no flight that does any route near Antarctica. I don't know what Antarctica is, but no flight goes there. You can't go there for a start. You're going to meet political and military backlash. But no flight does that. They fly what they're claiming is great circle routes, which is straight line routes. Adam showed flights and showed a map of flights only a few minutes ago. There's no flights doing anything like what he's saying. No flights do that.
Major
this is all. Sorry, what?
So not enough people would be interested in the flight so as to make the route profitable for an airline.
Yeah, that's a lot of rubbish. The flight is not available, so people aren't going to be using it. If it's available, people
it's just
use
coincidence that you did say you'd seen this video before, though. I doubt you've got a memory that good, though, to literally give the disclaimer or to give the debunk, and then he offers it up as a disclaimer. Oh, well, they don't actually exist, even though it's in my example. It's just not profitable enough.
Yeah, so it's like it's not profitable to go from London to New York at that point. You know, the same way as if it's supposedly not profitable enough to go from Sydney to Rio. Coincidentally, I couldn't find a direct flight from Sydney to Rio. I mean, Rio is a massive international city. You would think there'd be a direct flight. There isn't. There wasn't. The flight from Sydney to Mexico City. Sorry, 1 second. The flight from Sydney to Mexico City, you must do a dogleg. You must go to North America, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Denver, and then go to, Phoenix, I think, or Denver, and then go to Mexico City. And no flight goes south of Hawaii. It's a load of rubbish. Like, what he's actually doing is cherry picking the flights that he wants to use to try and attack us with, that somehow support his globe, which they don't, because he has to then add in a route that no airline takes. He's a complete fraud. If he was held to task on any of this, he would fail dramatically.
Few large cities in the southern hemisphere in general. Because of the way the continents are distributed around the Earth, 90% of the human population.
He says around the Earth, and then he shows in his diagram. Is this a global? Is this a global map? What's he talking about? This is a Mercator projection. So showing you how much of the southern hemisphere. He's just told you this is sphere-shaped. Is he showing it that way? No. He's showing it on a flat Mercator projection.
Population lives in the northern hemisphere, but much to the dismay of flat Earth.
Above this line? What makes you think that this land, when laid out like this, if you were to look at it in a three-dimensional manner and lie it out flat and reify it like you're describing, then we're going left of the line and right of the line. This isn't in any way global.
Earth priests, the southern hemisphere still exists, and its existence is single-handedly enough to make them cry like toddlers that
No, south exists. You can go south. But you describe it as a sphere, the bottom of, hemisphere. You just beg the question. When we deny that the bottom of your world, antipodal from where I'm standing now, is described by you and automatically assumed to be the bottom of the sphere by the way of this word hemisphere, no, we just don't accept that. Doesn't mean we don't think the south exists.
Found out
Can I just point out a flaw and a logical flaw he has there with his argument, because he claims, 90% of the world lives north of the equator, right? Now, I don't know if it is 90%. It is there is more people living north of the equator than south, but it's a completely fallacious argument, because Sydney or Melbourne or Perth or Adelaide, one of these cities, flying from there to Rio, Mexico City, Santiago, Colombia, any of these places, or Johannesburg, Cape Town, wherever you want to fly to, they're all cities, all major cities. Now, on his globe, the distance would be no different. There wouldn't be much of a difference in distance as from flying to London to Los Angeles. So you're going from one populated area to another populated area. Who cares how many people are living between those two populated areas? The point is, they're two major cities with millions of people in each one. So that's why the flights exist. That's why you can fly from London to Los Angeles. Not because of those people living in Atlanta. That has nothing to do with why people are going from London to Los Angeles. So it's completely fallacious logic.
Money isn't real. So that's it. Airplanes. Ask any airline pilot what the shape of the Earth is.
And they won't be able to tell you.
Well, they'll tell you about how they're... Well, no,
What
this
the
is...
heck?
I thought you were going to launch into what you actually do functionally in terms of how you'll pitch the plane.
Yeah. I mean, but when I say they won't be able to tell you, what I mean by that is that if they believe in a globe, all they'll be able to say to you, well, we live on a globe. I don't, because they don't give what they do. A lot of them may not just give it a second thought. They just do what they do. They don't, that's their job. They just do it. But those who do know and who would privately say it to you, those who have given it thought, would have to say to you, it has to be a horizontal plane. Because of how the lift effect makes it impossible to fly around the globe. It's impossible. As I said, it doesn't matter what claims they come up with. Anything below horizontal is officially a descent.
When they're done laughing at you, they'll tell you it's a sphere.
He's talking about pilots.
I sat in my... I'm going to go to it. I sat in the small...
Breaking up.
You're breaking up, then.
Breaking up.
Just over now.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up.
Drop and rejoin. I'll drop and rejoin.
And no, this moron doesn't count. He used to lie and say that he's a commercial pilot, but then he got exposed by a real pilot. Then he tried to hide the fact that he lied about it. It was hilarious.
You know what else was hilarious?
Yeah.
Wolfie6020 thinks that you can account for not actual drift, that's Coriolis effect, from his aeroplane. So that's the level of stupidity of the pilot that exposed this guy, who apparently claimed to be a professional pilot until he was exposed as not being one.
Do you know who that is he's talking about, Nate?
Bob Nodell.
Bob Nodell, yeah. Well, I just want to point out something, because I know Clint has something to say. I just want to point out there, Bob Nodell, Bob Nodell called you, Jaron called you a scammer, right? But Bob Nodell tried to give people the impression some years ago he's a commercial pilot, but he wasn't. So is that not being a scammer? Journalism never called him out for any of that. People actually tried to make excuses. Tried to make excuses for why Bob said that. No, Bob was lying. But it doesn't matter, because it doesn't mean anything to Dave's argument. Because whether you have a commercial license or a private license, if you own a 747, you can still fly from London to Los Angeles or wherever. The point is, you don't have to have a commercial license to still fly, to be like, when you're flying a plane privately and flying a plane commercially, it's the same thing. You're still doing the same thing. So it doesn't, like, whether somebody's a commercial pilot or a private pilot doesn't give it the argument more validity, is my point. It's no difference. You still have to do the same thing. Flight doesn't change just because your pilot's license changed. That doesn't change flight. It's still the same thing. So even though Bob Nodell's a liar and an idiot and a scammer and a fool, yeah, he is all those things. But that doesn't change that when he flies his plane, he flies a horizontal distance.
I'll link to the video all about this
I
incident
would like
below,
to point
in
out
case
that
watching him accidentally prove the Earth is a rotating sphere on a Netflix documentary was...
What, with a non-inertial and inertial reference frame that would shorten these flight times, Dave? Oh, it's so interesting that you couldn't resist talking about Bob Nodell. Because Bob Nodell is claimed to have proved the Earth spins by having a gyroscope in the inertial reference frame and a claimed 15 degrees an hour turn of the Earth beneath it in a separate non-inertial reference frame. Now, it's interesting that you say this man, Bob Nodell, proved Earth spinning with those two reference frames, because you didn't mention them once in any of the claims of what aeroplanes do. Now, if Bob was right with his assertions of Earth turn proved by gyroscopic motion with a second reference frame turning beneath it to induce drift, then Earth would be turning underneath all of the aeroplane examples that you gave. So why would it be that you choose to have a little jab at Bob Nodell about specifically two reference frames claimed to be proved by gyroscopic motion when they're in no way being shown by any of these aeroplanes? That seems like a massive contradiction, 'cause it is. If Bob Nodell proved there's two reference frames with a gyro, then Earth's turning underneath all of the aeroplanes. You're going to square that circle there, Fundy, because I've dragged Wolfie6020 by the short hairs through this nonsense. And I don't mind dragging Bob Nodell into it. Bob Nodell, if he's proving Earth spins with his gyro is proving there's a second reference frame turning underneath aeroplanes, shortening their flight times. And that certainly doesn't happen, so there's not 2 reference frames. Pity you had to have a little jab there at the end there, Dave. Otherwise, I wouldn't be saying this about your stupid nonsense that didn't include the 2 reference frames you say Bob proved Earth spinning with. No. And Becky didn't know about them either. She said things were tethered. So what's Bob proving? 2 reference frames. So how come Tom Cruise is tethered? Shouldn't he be drifting at 15 degrees an hour, as is claimed to be the proof in this gyro? It seems you don't understand Coriolis effect either there, do you, Dave? It's me with your head down the bog, mate, again. 2 reference frames that Bob's proven. Well, that would mean Earth turned underneath these flights there. Swish, swish, swish as your head goes down the bog, Dave. With me, the bully, dangling it, laughing at you. You clown. Don't you understand that you've just debunked every single assertion of the planes you just made with this little jab at Bob at the end? Oh, joy. Thick, thick man.
You know, it's almost useful that Bob and people like him exist for Dave to use as what we claim. You know, I don't want to say it's purposeful, but it seems pretty convenient that you have morons saying things that Dave can easily debunk.
Does he even have the diagram? This picture at the bottom, I don't know if he's got it, this is a still. But this shows motion of Earth under item in inertial reference frame, Dave. What, like a plane with Earth turning underneath it?
Wasn't enough. And you want
No, it's just a still. Go and check out that video where Bob makes it clear, according to the Globe Earthers, that there's a second reference frame turning under things that aren't attached. Like gyros, like independent of the turning Earth underneath them. Right? To show the drift as Earth turns underneath them. Why would it be that you'd show a diagram that specifically details how things turn underneath aeroplanes when you haven't accounted for that in your demonstration here? You've undone all of the shitty groundwork you did for your shitty claim that you had to defend and put on flat earthers just by bringing up Bob, the guy with 2 reference frames that you haven't accounted for, you complete clown. Wow, Dave, you are thick as shit.
to laugh some more at this.
I will laugh. I'll laugh at how stupid you are when it comes to the 2 reference frames that you've slapped onto the end and haven't accounted for in any of the aeroplane examples. You're thick. You're really dumb, Dave. It's me with you down the bog again. It's another Duncan, Dave. I really like your bully example, Dave, because every time I humiliate you, I'll be metaphorically dunking your head down a bog.
Stupid, hopeless moron.
Yeah, you are a hopeless moron that's just exampled how Earth claims to have 2 reference frames, one of which will be turning under aeroplanes, Dave.
I have.
Go on.
I have a tab presenting there when you want it, just to show how what he claimed concerning Bob, just what that would result in on the globe. When you're ready.
Now.
Okay. So, as you can see, there's 2 red lines and an orange line here, right? So, this red line here, from here to here, that's the distance between London and Accra, Ghana. That is a straight north to south route. There's only 1 point something degrees of longitudinal distance, right? This orange line here is the route that the plane would have to make if the Earth was a globe and was rotating. And the reason is that this is where Accra, Ghana is when the plane leaves London here, but the plane flight takes 6.5 hours to get to Accra, Ghana. So 6.5 hours later, Accra, Ghana is here at the end of this orange line, which means that that would not only does the pilot not fly directly south to Accra, Ghana, and has to go off out east, out over the Middle East, basically, but it more than doubles the distance of the flight. Now, I'm just going to show here. Right, 1 second now. Right, go back a little bit. Right, London to Accra, flight straight north to south. Distance 3,162 statute miles. British Airways flight time 6 hours 30 minutes. 3162 divided by 390 minutes is 8.10. 8.1 by 60 minutes is 486.46. So that's 486 0.46 miles per hour that the plane would be flying to get from London to Akragana with a distance of 3,162 statute miles. Now, I gave an example there of a small deviation, which would cause, so if there was a small deviation, then the plane would have to fly 566 miles per hour, just with a small deviation away from Akragana to the east. But if I use the globe as a rotating globe as the reference, then the distance becomes 6,251 statute miles, and that means that the plane would have to be flying 961.69 miles per hour, right? So for a flight from London, UK to reach Akragana in 6.5 hours, the plane, this is over a rotating globe, the plane needs to fly at a constant of 961.69 miles per hour on a rotating globe. The Airbus A380 is the fastest commercial airliner in the world with a top speed of 737 miles per hour. So even if we were on a rotating globe, there's no airliner in existence, commercial airliner in existence, that can fly at the speeds they needed to fly to reach Akragana 6.5 hours after leaving London on a rotating globe. So what Professor Dave just claimed there concerning Bob's gyro would mean that this would have to be a reality, which means there'd be no flight from London to Akragana because the flight wouldn't be able to make it because there's no plane in existence that can even fly that fast. That's the end of that.
Well done. Whoever said Bob represented flat earthers anyway?
Bob.
Well,
Bob did. And
well,
all these subscribers.
I don't see him giving any good arguments for flat Earth when he makes these errors that he has done that we pointed out, and it seems like more of an ego trip if he claims to speak for flat earthers. I speak for myself. Nathan speaks for himself. Brian speaks for himself. I don't know how any one of us could say we speak for all the flat earthers.
Wow,
Well,
I think
I
think I speak for all of us when I say Bob's definitely a scammer.
Absolutely, and let me just support that, Nathan. When I came out there a year and a half, 2 years ago, whatever it was, against Wolfie, calling Wolfie out on all his claims, the first person to attack me was Bob. Bob attacked me, told me get that video down that I brought out, my first video, that you don't know what you're talking about. Wolfie's going to tear you apart, and he got very nasty with me personally on Skype, right? And I said, no, Bob, I am 100%, I am correct, I know what I'm talking about, and I won't be doing any of that. And I've had follow-up videos to the original video I made that Wolfie couldn't do anything about. He couldn't do anything about any of them. So Bob wanted me to take down a video that was the precursor, that was a video that Wolfie couldn't deal with, that was a precursor of other videos that only made the pain even worse for Wolfie, because he told me that I don't know what I'm talking about, I don't understand the lift effect, and Wolfie will tear me apart. This is what Bob did. Bob came in trying to get me to take down a video that was calling Wolfie out. That's what happened with Bob. And as I showed and proved, I do know what I'm talking about. I do absolutely understand the lift effect, and I understand what it means. But why did Bob want me to not do that?
Same reason he asked me to take my videos down. Yeah, and was supported by Dave Weiss in the same endeavour. To hassle me to take videos down. All those videos were about how the scientific method worked. And Bob didn't want that being detailed, so they went out of their way to try and get me to take videos specifically about that subject down. That's what we have to deal with in Flat Earth from our own. People who want the good information taken down, because it doesn't tie in with their swindle very well.
Exactly.
So can I... No, go on, Brian. I'll finish.
I was just going to say, yeah, exactly, Nathan. He's not on our side. He just claims to be. Go on, Ken. Thank you.
Yeah, so a summary of Dave seems to be he's against flat Earth, but he uses globe projection maps and he destroys them and says that we say those are flat Earth maps. So he's basically destroyed his own argument. Another thing I pick up from Dave is that he assumes everything has been proven, but never shows any of the proof for anything, and then has a bunch of ad homs in between these declarations of his. It would be a wonderful thing if Andrew Gold could get some of these reviews of Professor Dave and realize he's got a gem of a show with Professor Dave and FED, where Dave could actually show these proofs that he says he's got, that he has. It's still, what, 4 videos now, at least, if not 5, if you count this one, because he had a part 4 from him and then the Andrew Gold. So 5 videos and not one bit of evidence. Not one.
No, he hasn't proven anything. He hasn't supported anything he said. Anything he said, he's begged the question and basically brought out flat out proofs and disproved globe, as he just did a minute ago with the claim of Bob's gyro, showing he doesn't even understand what the hell airplanes do or what they would have to do over a globe, over a rotating globe with a radius of 3959 miles. He doesn't understand any of this. He just proved that when he brought out Bob's gyro claim, which contradicted a lot of things he claimed.
I just want to reiterate that, Brian, that point exactly. Right? What that tells me, and the reason I went, you're thick, is because if you had a reasonable handle on the actual argument, you'd realise that by throwing up an example that has Coriolis deflection, that's things drifting from or appearing to drift as you observe them from the ground, because you're rotating, he'd realise that undoes every single aspect of his claims with planes, if he hasn't accounted for it, which he didn't. He didn't even mention it. But then right at the end, oh, by the way, Earth turns underneath aeroplanes. This man here proved it. Really? Did they turn underneath all the aeroplanes in your examples to cause them to seem to drift? Because you didn't detail that, because it doesn't happen. So why are you throwing Bob up? Well, because he doesn't understand his own claim. He doesn't understand his own argument, so therefore he doesn't understand when he's contradicting his own argument. When he throws up a proof C at the end of 2 reference frames with gyros proving it, he doesn't realise that undoes the claims not drifting when that's a proof C for a globe. Therefore, he doesn't understand any of this shit, does he? He's just a fucking retard.
It's not only that,
he just
Nathan.
proved at the very end he didn't understand. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, just on a less technical level. It's just the way he talks. I mean, he sounds like he's out of Sesame Street, or you're reading, your son or daughter of 3 years old, Humpty Dumpty, and with all these so sad, he's just calling names and ad homs. But that's what these anti-flat earthers and globe believers like. They're not listening to anything except for his childish comments. That's about it.
Well, one of the things he said on the first video is you'll get a load of spewed emojis. Throughout his video, giant emojis appeared all through it. It's like, he knows who he's appealing to. He's appealing to the lowest common denominator. And his audience is that, isn't it? Put it out to the normies. They like people being ridiculed and giant emojis. But what flat earthers will do is put up giant emojis. So everyone in his audience goes, yay! Hey, look at the emoji. It's just beggars belief.
Yeah, but it just goes it just goes to show that he is really not giving anything any thought. He's just reading off of a script, which he basically admits, because he says other people do his research for him, and they just give him the research to, because he didn't do any research on anything. The fact that he brought up the Bob's gyro at the end, he doesn't know what gyros are. That's for sure. He doesn't understand what the point of a gyro existing is. And the claims that he's trying to make concerning them, right, would make them obsolete, number one. Number two, they're in complete opposition to his whole video. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But he speaks with such confidence that people believe him.
Nathan's trying to make a point, is that they're basically continually trying to pull a Clinton. They're constantly trying to accuse whatever they're doing, almost like desperately. They are just making this move, and then the first thing they do is, let's project this on our opponent and work with that. And so what they keep doing every time, it's born out of desperation.
Exactly. My opponent will spew emojis all over you. Emoji, 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 emoji. Yeah? That is it's pure projection. My opponent was scripted. It's like you read off scripts, Dave. Just projection. My opponent's thick and don't do any research. Have you got the new script?
Yeah, my opponent, he knows that he knows the truth, but he's telling you otherwise.
Do you think that's a projection as well? When he says that about us, we really know it's a sphere. No, you hope we actually know it, because then you can go away not worrying about the fact that you're pondering it and then bracing against it. So in reality, yeah, that is also a projection.
I don't know if a numpty like that is. An anti-flat earther for definite is a projection. I don't think he's bothered to even know his own model well enough to disprove it, if you see what I mean. That's how we become flat earthers. We know the model. We see it. I don't think when you listen to him, he demonstrates that he knows his own thing. As he said, he's a narrator almost, isn't he?
I agree with Adam 100% here, because you want to stay away from Earth rotation as much as you can. You want to stay away from curvature that anyone could see as much as you can, because these things are never shown, never seen, never experienced, to the point where Neil deGrasse Tyson goes to say, he shoots down Bezos, Virgin, and what's the other guy? Elon Musk. Their private so-called space flights. No, they never went high enough. He shoots them down just so he could avoid it. But what is the globe claim, Nathan, on these matters? What is their claim?
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. In what regards?
That's all right. What is, okay, I'll go to Adam. Adam, what is the globe claim on Earth's rotation and curvature? What is their claim?
That's 15 degrees an hour.
But yeah, you got to stay away from it because it's not experienced. And what about curvature? What is that supposed to be? Something about 8 inches per mile, right?
Approximately 2, yeah.
And that's never seen. If just those two things, if they existed, we would not be talking.
Well, let me point something else out here. What is the one practical thing that anyone can experience and could gain a bit of knowledge on easily that Dave focused on within his 4 videos, or his 4 points, or whatever it was? Air travel. Why would you be focusing on that, Dave? Is it because that's the very thing you need to character assassinate? Because it's the very thing that absolutely annihilates you. Exactly, Neil. He's focusing on that. Yeah. It is though, isn't it, Neil? He's just focusing on the very thing and trying to character assassinate it as far as any claims he would claim we make about it. Because that's the very thing that definitely proves it's not a globe. Without a shadow of doubt.
Ryan, so
it's a perfected Clinton method.
1 second. Keep the layman stupid, right? Keep them blinded to the fact that they can experience this and know for themselves. So let me focus on this here, because the layman will listen to me. Now that I called all flat earthers stupid and dumb, but came with no proof whatsoever.
And with that, I'm going to say another massive thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams. Hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
lovely day.